The narration transports us 249 years into the past. The common, people look toward the sky with expressions of terror and awe. An older man points upward, his face a mask of incredulity, while others, including a young archer, watch petrified. From the perspective of a young girl, we see her eyes widen, reflecting the catastrophic event unfolding. A massive dimensional portal has opened in the heavens, and then a horde of terrifying creatures descended from the portal, bat-winged humanoid figures with bone armor and spears, escorting even larger and more monstrous beings. These are creatures that in the future will be known as demons. Led by an imposing, monstrous female figure with a bifid tongue, and under the shadow of a colossal demon with multiple tentacles and red eyes, an army of winged and reptilian beings plunges toward the earth. After their descent, they declare their intention to invade humanity. The carnage begins. A demon with jagged claws and teeth descends upon a group of humans. Violence and despair take over the city with terrified families. Witnessing death and destruction, this was the beginning of the demon invasion. Realizing the terrible situation, the Orthodox Alliance formed the Celestial Demon Extermination Corps. A warrior with a determined face raised his sword, leading a group of brave martial artists who charged into battle, declaring they would subjugate the demons. 3 days later in Anhui, they encountered the demonic army. The battle was a massacre. A lone demon stands over a mountain of corpses of human warriors. The Extermination Corps were annihilated. A year later, the devastation was immense. Half the population of the Central Plains had been slaughtered, and in one last desperate attempt, the Orthodox and non-Orthodox Murim, factions that were previously enemies, worked together to form the last line of resistance in Sichuan. Warriors from all sects, with somber faces and eyes glowing with determination, joined together. Buddhist monks and Taoist swordsmen fought side by side against the demonic hordes. The battle lasted for more than half a month. The result was catastrophic. 90% of the resistance army was annihilated. The bodies of fallen fighters covered the ground. Officially, the Murim of the Central Plains had been erased from existence. The few survivors left were turned into slaves and dragged to the demon realm, and among them was our protagonist, who was also captured and taken there. 5 years later, the protagonist, now a gaunt young man, is trapped in a complex experimental apparatus. Being incapable of using internal energy since birth, he was classified as a rare species. Through various experiments and brainwashing, he became part of the demon realm's subjugation army. Decades passed. He was forced to invade other dimensions and carry out countless massacres alongside orcs, elves, and other races. He killed more, and killed even more. 75 years after becoming a slave soldier, his appearance had changed. Now, with white hair and a demonic mask covering his mouth, he was recognized for his contributions and promoted to commander among the demons. 120 years after his promotion, he finally discovered it. After 50 years of searching, he found the conditions and methods to manifest an ancient power, represented as a gigantic cosmic eye in the sky. And 65 years after that, in a demonic citadel under a purple and stormy sky, the rebellion he had meticulously prepared began. A week after the start of the rebellion, we reach the present. The battlefield is covered with the bodies of demonic soldiers. The protagonist, gasping and coughing blood, kneels exhausted. The rebellion has failed. In front of him, a colossal figure shrouded in flames materializes. It is Demon King Taran who expresses his disappointment. He questions why he risked all the contributions he had accumulated over centuries for such a low-level rebellion. He calls the defeated warrior by his demonic name. With a defiant grunt, the man rejects that name, and with blood gushing from his mouth, he declares his true identity: Sabigan, Demon King. Taran reflects without understanding. He admits to having observed humans like him all this time. Although their skills are insignificant, their tenacious obsession with survival is their only strength. He wonders why, after so much time, he has acted so recklessly. Sabigan, with a slight smile, explains that it was necessary. He had to experience this battle at least once, so he could ensure a definitive victory the next time they fought. Tehran considers this an interesting way of thinking, but also stupid. He asks if he truly thought he would give him a second chance, affirming he would die right there. But Sabigan, with unshakable determination in his gaze, assures him he will not be killed by him. A final effort activates a hidden power. A purple magic circle appears beneath him, and a pillar of energy envelops him. The Demon King observes him and then understands. He recognizes the power he is using. Temporal regression. The authority of Nuzerum, an ancient evil god. He realizes the reason Sabigan endured his defeat and humiliation in silence for over 200 years was all for this moment. Wrapped in purple energy, Sabigan screams at the Demon King to wait and see. He swears that next time he will prepare even more thoroughly and give him a beating. He screams that all the cursed demons will die. Demon King. Tehran lets out a guttural smile, a malevolent grin. He tells him he looks forward to that moment, recognizing him as the only human he has come to respect. The purple energy explodes. Xavier disappears. The scene changes back to the Murim Central Plains under a night sky. A bolt of pure energy falls from the sky, piercing the roof of a building, leaving a young man unconscious on the floor. This young man is the protagonist, Sabigan, back in his original body. The time remaining until the demon invasion is 10 years. The story moves forward to the following morning at the Martial Arts Academy of the Orthodox Alliance, specifically at the Spring Dragon Academy. Two laborers are repairing the damaged roof. One of them comments in surprise that a bolt of lightning fell out of nowhere and was powerful enough to destroy the training hall's roof. The other replies that they should be relieved only the loser was injured. They refer to the vice instructor, an orphan brought in by the physician Jin Beck, the same one who was struck by lightning a few days ago. The first laborer remembers he is the martial arts instructor who cannot use internal energy. And his companion adds with a cruel laugh that it would have been better if he had been seriously injured. Since today is his public execution, the scene shifts to a training courtyard packed with people. An announcer starts the duel for the position of instructor. Chain Dragon, Spring Assistant Spearman presents the duelists. The current assistant instructor, Sabigan. His opponent is the challenger recommended for the position, Manson Doug, the so-called invincible and divine spear. The announcer continues, stating that this is a request to verify the capabilities of assistant instructor Sabigan, so this duel will determine who deserves to be the assistant instructor. Both must fight with their honor as martial artists at stake. Madsen Dog mocks Sabigan, saying that he thought he was making up an excuse to avoid the fight when he heard he'd been struck by lightning. But since he showed up anyway, he promises to finish him quickly for his bravery. Sabigan, instead of responding, begins to narrate a story. He speaks of an academy instructor who, in a very distant future, cannot use internal energy due to a birth trait. Because of this, he was looked down upon by everyone in the end. That incompetent instructor, the shame of the academy, suffered a horrible defeat in a public duel. His position was stolen, and he was relegated to doing minor chores, suffering through truly terrible days. Mason Duck looks at him confused, wondering what nonsense he is saying. Sabigan concludes his tale by walking toward his opponent. He tells him that, in short, he has waited a long time for this moment, calling him an ugly moron and making a provocative gesture. Enraged, Madsen Dog screams how he dares to act with such arrogance. He was going to let him keep some of his pride as an instructor, but now it's time for him to pay for his arrogant mouth. Charging his spear with red energy, he unleashes his martial art. Bull Demon Spear Art. First form. Fierce Bull Charge. He lunges forward, but his spear pierces only the air. Sabigan has disappeared from his sight. Madsen realizes. Startled, he sees Sabigan behind him, who comments that his attack was decent enough, but that he needs to actually hit for it to be of any use. Madsen, screaming that he is a bastard, turns around and attacks him, but Sabigan dodges him effortlessly. Madsen cannot believe how he could so easily dodge an attack he has trained for decades. They had said he was weak, but this is totally different. Sabigan, with a smile of superiority, tells him he was very slow and wonders how he can teach anyone with those skills. Madsen, convinced it was just luck, screams "die" and jumps into the air to execute his next technique, Bull Demon Spear Art, fourth form, Fallen Bull Strike. But Sabagon, with absolute calm, spins his own spear at an incredible speed, creating an impenetrable defense capable of blocking the attack completely. Madsen, laughing, tells him there is no way that mediocre spear technique can block his attack. Then, Sabagon extends his hand, and a sphere of fire materializes in his palm as he pronounces, "Fireball." Madsen, confused and terrified, can barely stammer an "eh?" The fireball impacts against him with a massive explosion. The announcer, sweating and in a panic, declares that the duel has ended. The winner is assistant instructor Sabagon, while Madsen lies on the ground screaming and asking for water to put out the flames. Sabagon's narration returns to the memory of his original defeat, being captured by the demons and dragged to their realm, where he survived for centuries, and in that process he realized something very important. He asks what they think of his Yang fire art, revealing that high-level magic is indistinguishable from martial arts. With a radiant and satisfied smile, he reveals that his martial art is known as Fireball. Madsen lies on the ground, his body smoking and twisting in pain, as a wave of shock and confusion spreads through the crowd. Sabagon, with a carefree smile, waves at him and casually remarks that it was a good fight. The spectators are in shock. A pale-faced student wonders what he just witnessed, questioning if that was really a martial art, trying to recall what Sabagon said about wanting to see it called Fireball. The confusion spreads to the elders sitting on the platform. One of them, stuttering, asks what just happened. Another, visibly angry, demands to know what kind of nonsense that was. The eldest addresses Sabagon, congratulating him on his victory, but his tone is accusatory. He reminds him that he thought he couldn't use internal energy. Sabagon, with an enigmatic smile, attributes it to a simple stroke of luck. The elder repeats the word luck, incredulous. Then Sabagon invents a flimsy story. He says that a few days ago, during a walk, he ate a herb he had never seen before, and that suddenly he was able to use internal energy while narrating this story, illustrated with comic drawings. He winks playfully before he can finish the sentence. This infuriates one of the elders, who screams at him, asking if he is mocking them. He demands he stop talking nonsense to his elders and accuses him of insulting them all. With total calm, Sabagon responds that it's their choice to believe him or not and wonders what it matters. The elders are left speechless, and Sabagon goes on to ask if he somehow cheated in the duel. He clarifies that while the fight was for the position of spear instructor, there was no rule prohibiting the use of other techniques. He concludes by saying he doesn't understand why he has to be interrogated this way when he won fairly and cleanly. The furious elder is about to reply, but another of the masters puts a hand on his shoulder, asking him to calm down. This master, with resignation, admits that Sabagon has won the fight. Just as he was about to continue, Sabagon interrupts him by raising a hand, apologizing for the interruption. And taking advantage of the fact that everyone is gathered, he announces he has a petition to make. The master asks, bewildered, what it is about. With a firm and decided posture, Sabagon requests, officially, a trial to be promoted to official instructor. After his shocking declaration, he turns around and walks away, leaving the elders stunned. As he walks, the other instructors whisper among themselves, recognizing him as the victor of the duel. He, however, continues on his way with a serene gaze. The Spring Dragon Academy is one of the many training halls established by the Orthodox Alliance to prevent difficulties in the Murim world. Its purpose is to train martial artists who will become the future pillars of the Alliance, welcoming youths between 15 and 18 years old from clans of certain renown. The instructors are masters of the Alliance, divided into assistants and senior instructors. The assistants, rather than teaching, usually act as helpers. The scene shifts to a room. Sabagon is about to enter when he stops and they ask him what happened. Upon opening the door, he encounters an older man of severe appearance. It is the master of the Body Recovery Pavilion, Jin Baek. The academy physician Jin Baek, with a sigh, asks him how it is that he can suddenly use internal energy and what it is he has done. Sabagon tries to repeat his excuse about the stroke of luck, but the doctor interrupts him, shouting that it is nonsense. With a voice cracking with emotion, he reminds him that he has treated him for a long time, since the day it was known he could not use internal energy. He tells him that he has tried every possible method to cure him. The doctor, his face distorted by anguish, laments that if Sabigan's condition could be cured so easily, he wonders what kind of useless doctor he is. With tears in his eyes, he confesses he knows better than anyone how much he was hated by others due to his inability, and that now he feels too ashamed to look him in the face. He breaks into tears, asking for forgiveness over and over. Sabigan observes him in silence, thinking to himself that Jin Beck hasn't changed at all. To him, he is like a father. A memory flashes across his mind, a scene from 542 years ago, or 15 years according to the new timeline, in which Jin Beck saved him as a child from the flames of a bandit ambush in his previous life. That was the day Jin Beck lost his own life trying to save others. With a new determination, Sabigan approaches the distressed doctor. With absolute conviction, he tells himself that this time he will make sure he doesn't die. He asks him not to blame himself or worry about him. With a reassuring smile, he asks him to trust him, promising that he will solve all the problems from now on. Later, already at night, Sabigan is alone in his room, looking at the moon through the window, concentrating. An energy, blue and a magic circle form in his hand. He reflects on his current state. By returning in time, he lost more than 90% of his mana. The best he can gather now is fourth circle magic, which is disappointing considering it took him centuries to reach the 8th circle in his past life. However, he quickly corrects himself, thinking he should be grateful to even retain his mana. A steely gaze affirms that he has returned from that hell. The history of the Murim world has been reversed, and the demons have not yet invaded, but the keyword is yet. He knows that exactly in 10 years the invasion will begin, and when that occurs, the Murim world will fall again. However, this time will be different. He clenches his fist, remembering that he retains his 300 years of memories, information about the demonic army, the magic they use, the artifacts and weapons they prepared for an invasion, and most importantly, how to defeat the Demon King. His eyes shine with an intense red glow full of determination. Just at that moment, someone knocks on his door. It is Jin Beck, who asks if he is there. Sabigan responds, and the doctor informs him with a worried tone that the Academy's vice director, Seong-yoon, is looking for him. Sabigan asks if it's at this very moment, and if it was the vice director himself who asked him to give the message. Jin Beck, with a tired expression, tells him it doesn't matter, that he is more worried about him. He believes the call is related to his promotion request and warns him to be careful. He is sure the test will be difficult since Madsen Dog, the one recommended by the vice director, lost in such a humiliating way. Jin Beck is convinced the vice director holds no appreciation for him. Finally, he asks why he suddenly decided he wanted to be an official instructor. While he gets dressed, a sinister smile forms on Sabigan's face. With a fierce determination, he thinks that this is the first step toward fixing this academy. Later, he walks through the corridors, heading toward the meeting. He reflects that there was once a time when the Spring Dragon Academy was highly recommended enough to be considered the best of the top 3 orthodox martial academies. However, 2 years ago, the academy master, as well as one of the 10 best martial masters, suddenly disappeared. The academy searched for him for years without success, since it was difficult to replace someone as skilled as him. As a result, the Spring Dragon Academy lost its fame. But something more serious happened. Arriving at a room, he stops before 2 masters. The one in the front is Vice Director Seong-yoon. He asks him sternly if he is serious about his promotion request. Sabigan looks at him with a hidden smile, but his internal thoughts are poisonous. He thinks that piece of trash is precisely the catalyst for the Spring Dragon Academy's fall. As Sabigan observes the vice director, a painful and burning memory from his past life invades his mind. The day of the demon invasion, the academy was in flames and he was covered in wounds and with a bloodied hand, fighting desperately to survive. Massive, dimensional rifts opened everywhere, and from them emerged never-before-seen monsters that massacred people without mercy. That marked the beginning of the invasion of the otherworldly species that came to be known as the Demon Race. The young disciples of the Spring Dragon Academy, terrified, were mercilessly murdered by the monstrous creatures. In the middle of the chaos, Sabigan remembers seeing the vice director, Seong-yoon, and another master fleeing with stolen treasures. His mind fills with bitterness, thinking that if Seong hadn't fled first, had informed others of the situation, or activated the Academy's defense system, Many deaths would have been avoided. He can still vividly remember the screams of the disciples sacrificed Gunal. However, he composes himself, thinking that thanks to his return to the past, that tragedy has not yet occurred. But he swears to himself that he will never forget the disgusting and hypocritical face of the vice director. With a polite smile hiding his contempt, Sabigan bows and asks what Seong needs. Seong, ignoring his attitude, informs him about the test to become a senior instructor. The mission is to raid the demonic night fortress. Sabigan asks if he means the mountain bandits behind the academy. Coldly, Seong orders him to kill them. That is his test. The demonic night force is a group of bandits located on the ancient holy mountain not far from the academy. Due to frequent reports of damage caused by them, an order has been issued to raid them for the benefit of civilians. An order signed by Seong Yoon himself. Sabigan, after examining the document, asks what this has to do with being an instructor. Seong explains that these are obviously the most basic requirements for an instructor. The other master, Diom Bui, adds that senior instructors are the main force of the academy and are considered masters of martial arts. All of them officially recognized by the Orthodox Alliance. They have achieved great feats, such as eliminating demonic martial arts leaders or wiping out bandits. Sabigan interrupts him with an impatient gesture, saying he already understands and asking how much time he has. Master Diom, indignant at his rudeness, is about to reprimand him, but Seong Yoon intervenes by raising a hand. He grants him exactly 2 weeks, warning him that if he is late by even 1 day, he will forever lose his chance for promotion. With a sly smile, Sabigan responds that he doesn't need 2 weeks, that they will see each other in 3 days. He turns around and leaves, leaving the masters furious and bewildered. Master Diom, incredulous, asks the vice director if he is really going to promote that arrogant brat. Seong Yoon, with a malicious smile, assures him he has nothing to worry about. In a sinister tone, he declares that poor assistant instructor Sabigan will never return. Master Diom, confused, asks what he means. Meanwhile, Sabigan leaves the building, moving at supernatural speed thanks to an acceleration spell. He thinks to himself, calling Seong a fake bastard, and asking if he really thinks he doesn't know what he's plotting. His thoughts turn again to the demonic night fortress. He remembers it was during this period when the Green Forest Alliance began to gain fame, although at this moment people still didn't know much about them. It wasn't a large organization back then. The real problem and the reason for Seong's malicious smile was that the bandit leader, Gok Gu-yong, was a peak realm martial arts master. Gok Gu-yong, master of the demonic night fortress, was no ordinary bandit leader. He was a former leader of a northern sect called the Heaven Destroyer sect. It was believed he had been killed by traitors a few years ago. But in reality, he managed to survive. Later, he tracked down and killed every single one of the traitors. His revenge was so cruel that even the Orthodox Murim put a price on his head. Since then, he has been hiding and arrived at this mountain recently. Back in the room, a stunned Master Diom asks Seong Yoon how he knows all this. The vice director laughs and downplays it. He admits Sabigan was impressive during the duel, but that it was only possible because he hid his true abilities. However, he reminds him that this test is a real situation, not a duel, and he is certain he will not return alive. Meanwhile, Sabigan arrives at the mountain using levitation magic. He reflects on his opponent. As he remembers him, his fourth circle magic won't be enough to defeat him. But for him, the solution is simple. He lands in a clearing and declares that he is there to increase his mana and rise in circle rank. After all, his experience and knowledge of magic are already at the 8th circle. Using a search spell, his vision transforms, allowing him to see the flow of energy in the area. He approaches a cliffside that appears normal, but is actually a barrier made of mana. With a smile, he touches the barrier, confirming he is in the right place. He thinks that no one could have imagined multiple places like this exist in the Central Plains, hidden by mana barriers. He crosses the barrier and enters a cave where he finds an enormous glowing purple special-grade mana stone. An explanation reveals that demons are intelligent creatures that repeatedly invade and conquer other dimensions thanks to their dimensional travel technology. However, that technology has a fatal flaw. The time it takes for a living being to cross a portal is very different from that of an inanimate object. Unable to solve this problem, the demons devised a solution to secretly stash the equipment they would need in the future in the worlds they plan to invade. This mana stone is the source of their power, As it recovers mana, it is useless to the people of the Central Plains who cannot use mana, or at least it was until now. Sabigan extends his hand toward the stone, absorbing its energy. While a smile forms on his face with this power, he prepares for his confrontation. Far from there, in a dark forest, the bandit leader, Gu Yong, covered in bandages and with glowing eyes, is surrounded by his men. One of them nervously informs him that nothing seems out of the ordinary. Gu Yong, with a threatening voice, asks if he is implying he made a mistake. The terrified bandit flatly denies it. The leader orders him to shut up and search thoroughly, insisting he felt a burst of energy in that area suddenly. And while commenting that losers like them would never know, they all turn and see Sabigan. He remarks in amazement, recognizing him as truly a great master of the Peak Realm and declaring he believed in their leader. Gu Yong, his red eyes fixed on the newcomer, asks who Sabigan is. Sitting calmly on a rock and creating a magic circle with his hand, he responds with a smile, introducing himself as an instructor from the Spring Dragon Academy. The bewildered bandits repeat the academy's name, wondering what an instructor from that place is doing there. Their leader, Gu Yong, screams at them to be quiet, his red eyes fixed on Sabigan. He asks if he is telling the truth. He wants to know if he was the cause of the great energy explosion he felt earlier. With a mocking smile, Sabigan responds affirmatively. In an instant, Gu Yong unleashes a blast of red energy that impacts at our protagonist's feet. Enraged, swinging his energy-imbued weapon, he declares that in that case, he will kill him, as that is precisely why he has come. Sabigan wastes no time, launching a purple energy projectile that Gu Yong can barely stop with his weapon. He quickly invokes a mana blade, a purple energy sword, and launches into the attack. In the blink of an eye, he cuts down several bandits, leaving Gu Yong dumbfounded. Sabigan tells him it's a coincidence, because he has also come to kill him. He invokes a second mana blade called Thrice, and dives back into combat. Gu Yong clashes his weapon against Sabigan's magic blade, and the force of the impact pushes him back. With a confident smile, Sabigan tells him he better avenge his subordinates. The furious bandit leader demands to know who he is. The battle intensifies. Gu Yong and Sabigan exchange blows at a dizzying speed, their energy weapons clashing with flashes of red and purple light. Gu Yong cannot believe it. He realizes that his opponent is not trying at all. He is playing with him. With a grunt of frustration, Gu Yong backs away and unleashes all his power. A violent red aura envelops him as he activates an ultimate technique, the divine arts of the heaven-destroying hegemon. Releasing his power core, he screams in a rage. Asking him how he dares to force him to use that power, he explains, full of fury, that after being cast off a cliff by traitors and having collected all that innate core energy while dreaming of his revenge, just as he is about to continue his monologue, Sabigan abruptly interrupts him, asking, "Who asked you?" The leader is struck dumb with surprise. With total disdain, Sabigan tells him he doesn't care about the story of a useless villain. From beneath Gu Yong's feet, his crystalline blue energy emerges and swirls, forming a freezing wave, but Sabigan doesn't just stand there. He casts a spell. Astral Chain. Two purple portals appear on either side of Gu Yong, and from them emerge chains that wrap around his arms, immobilizing him. While the bandit struggles, screaming in helplessness, Sabigan approaches him on foot. He explains that the struggle is useless. The moment the chains touch him, they absorb his internal energy. It is a spell specially designed to take down martial artists. Gu Yong, feeling his strength fade, asks him where he learned that sorcery, and if he belongs to the demon cult. Sabigan corrects him, telling him it is magic, not sorcery, though he adds he shouldn't expect much from a simple, desperate bandit. Gu Yong wonders how he can die in a place like this. Sabigan asks if he has regrets. With a cry of fury, the bandit leader claims he has not yet achieved his revenge against the bastards who manipulated his subordinates, the same ones who forced him to work with the Orthodox Alliance. He screams that everything he has done, hiding in the mountains and recovering his power, has been for his revenge. Just as his speech reaches its climax, Sabigan claps sarcastically. With a laugh, he tells him he is very determined, and that this is exactly how a revenge should be carried out. Slowly, thoroughly, and without giving up. Gu Yong, bewildered by his reaction, asks if he is mocking him. He screams, what would he know, being nothing but a child who has grown up in comfort. Sabigan's smile vanishes. His face darkens, and with an icy voice he asks if he truly believes he has lived comfortably. Gak Guyong, feeling a chill run down his spine, realizes he is not just any madman. That there is something fundamentally broken in him. With a terrifying calm, Sabigan tells him it's fine, that he will let him get a taste of the hell he himself endured for 200 years, and places his hand on the bandit's head while his eyes glow with a charged purple light. Gak Guyong's eyes fly wide open, filled with terror. He finds himself in a desolate and dark landscape, surrounded by twisted rock pillars. Confused, he wonders what this place is. What the hell that crazy bastard has done to him? Under the light of a full moon, a terrifying vision manifests before him. A colossal demon with multiple wings, tentacles, and glowing red eyes. It is a vision of the hell that Sabigan experienced. The demon invasion. Gak Guyong is paralyzed seeing how the world burns, how warriors fight and die, how demons experiment on humans in laboratory vats, and how mountains of skulls pile up. He feels in his own skin the pain and despair of that era, screaming in agony. Suddenly, the illusion vanishes. Gak Guyong, now reduced to an empty shell, collapses at Sabigan's feet, trembling and panting. Sabigan, catching his breath, asks him what he thought of it, revealing to him that this is the future he will experience in 10 years. The bandit leader, trembling and with tears in his eyes, can barely articulate words, begging him to kill him. He cannot bear the horror he has witnessed. Sabigan observes him coldly and responds that he understands. With a swift and decisive movement of his sword, he grants his wish. Back at the academy, Xiong Yun waits impatiently, cursing to himself. Suddenly, the door bursts open and something heavy, wrapped in a sack, rolls across the floor alongside Gak Guyong's imposing sword. Sabigan enters the room and, with a smile, asks what he thinks. He explains he thought they wouldn't believe him if he only brought the sword, so he also brought the bandit leader's head. With a formal bow, he suggests that they should now discuss his new duties as a senior instructor. The news of Sabigan's promotion spreads like wildfire through the academy. In a meeting room, a group of senior instructors discusses heatedly. One of them, the fist technique instructor Zhang Wanjin, strikes the table in frustration, screaming that it is nonsense. He cannot believe that Sabigan, who until a few days ago was the shame of the academy, is now a senior instructor. Another instructor, the archery expert Yun Byuk, asks Daom Buijun if it's true that Sabigan raided the fortress alone. Daom, wiping sweat from his forehead, confirms that he went to the ancient holy mountain that very morning. He found the corpses of the bandits, including Gak Guyong's, exactly where Sabigan said they would be. He admits he doesn't know how he did it, but everyone, except for the leader, had their throats slit with a single cut. Zhang Wanjin, he erupts, shouting that it's nonsense. He recalls that Sabigan was a spear instructor and asks if he's now claiming he had a hidden sword technique. Daom, cornered, yells back, asking if he's implying his eyes deceived him, and dares him to go check for himself if he doesn't believe it. Just then, the authoritative voice of Xiong Yun Sung interrupts them, ordering them to be quiet and asking what they are doing. Yo Wanjin apologizes, and the vice director sits down, lost in thought. He can't make sense of it, no matter how much he thinks about it. He knows that Gak Guyong was at minimum a peak realm master. He himself met him and confirmed his level when he relayed an order from the Orthodox Alliance. Yet Sabigan killed him in a single night along with all his subordinates. It's something that even he, as a peak realm master, could not do. He asks if Jin Beck helped him but discards the idea, knowing the physician isn't that skilled. He decides he'll have to investigate more thoroughly. He turns to Daom Bui and asks him to contact the Phantom Shadow Unit, one of the largest assassin organizations in the Murim, known for doing anything if paid enough. He orders him to request they find out everything possible about Sabigan, even what he does in his daily life. Instructor Yo, still indignant, asks if he's really going to promote him. Xiong assures him not to worry, that he has an idea. He hands him a couple of scrolls, unrolling them, Yo realizes it's the list of disciples Sabagan will be in charge of once he's promoted. Upon reading the names, his expression changes to one of shock, and then to a loud laugh. He exclaims that he expected no less from him, that it's a brilliant idea. Seong, with a satisfied smile, comments that he has made good use of his position and assures him that Sabigan might resign his post before the Phantom Shadow Unit even discovers anything. Daeom agrees, adding that it's possible since he has very little experience. Seong asks Daeom if he gave this list to Sabagan as well, and he confirms it. Seong asks what he said upon seeing it. Daeom responds that he looked at it with indifference and said that even if he saw it, he would know, and he simply smiled and said he understood. As Sabagan walks away, he thinks to himself that those old men are idiots and are doing exactly what he expected. He reflects on his decision to return to this time and place. After discovering the power of regression, he wondered thousands of times what he should do to prepare for the invasion. The enemy is an army that has conquered countless dimensions, and being a single person has its limits. Although there are many things he can do, he concluded that the best thing was to form an army, not one of weaklings like those who died before his regression, but a powerful army that has learned all types of magic and martial arts. He arrives at a courtyard where a group of youths awaits him. They are the disciples he has been assigned, the first-year troublemakers. Although they have talent, their problematic personalities, or the lack of a prestigious lineage has prevented them from progressing. The old masters surely thought he wouldn't be able to handle them, but what they couldn't imagine is that among these youths were the two heroes who stood out most during the demon invasion in his previous timeline. 1. A martial master who reached the evolutionary realm in his late 20s, the last hope of the Murim and future leader of the Heavenly Sword Alliance. The other, a talented archer who led an assassination squad and killed the greatest number of demons on his own, the future demon-slaying divine archer. With a twisted smile that reveals sharp fangs, Sabagan introduces himself. He tells them that starting today, he is their instructor. The two future heroes, now simple students, stand before him within the walls of the academy. Spring Dragon tension explodes in a violent confrontation. A youth is struck with brutal force. The impact resonates with a dull sound while his face contorts in pain and surprise. He falls to his knees, coughing and trying to catch his breath. The aggressor, a muscular youth, stands before him and sternly orders him to get up, reminding him that his martial arts training isn't over yet. His identity is revealed. Go Buyuk, first-year student of the Camellia class and second son of the Tiger and Dragon Escort Academy. On the ground, the assaulted youth, identified as Tang Leung, eldest son of the One-Star Sword Clan, begs Buuk to stop, but Buuk mocks his plea, asking sarcastically if he's trying to make him look like a bully. He tells him arrogantly that he should be grateful, since he's showing a weakling like him his magnificent martial arts from the Tiger and Dragon mountain-splitting fists. Tang Lin tries to defend himself, muttering that it's the swordsmanship taught by his One-Star Sword Clan. Upon hearing the clan's name, Buuk breaks into a mocking and contemptuous laugh. He asks with cruelty why he would want to keep learning such pathetic martial arts that he couldn't even use to defend himself. Humiliation and anger fill Tang's face. As he clenches his fist in frustration, Buuk notices the gesture and, with a voice full of threat, orders him with a curse to stop clenching his fists. With an intimidating tone, he asks if what he wants is another duel. The threat is enough to break Tang's last resistance. He surrenders completely, falling to the ground defeated and hopeless. Just at that moment, a new voice intervenes, telling Buuk that's enough. This new cadet is introduced. Yeon Wook-hyun of the Camellia class and second son of the great Yeon Destructive Sword. He warns Buuk that the exam period is about to begin and that he should stop causing unnecessary trouble. Buuk, although visibly annoyed, reluctantly obeys and leaves, telling Tang to consider himself lucky. Tang, still on the ground, thanks Wook-hyun, who simply observes him in silence for a moment, before turning around and walking away, leaving Tang alone with his thoughts and his defeat. Then later, a messenger appears at the door specifically looking for the three cadets, Yeon Wook-hyun, Go Buuk, and Tang Lin. The man informs them of sudden news from the Academy's vice director, Seong Yoon. He tells them they will no longer belong to the Camellia class and will instead be transferred to a newly created class. The news leaves them all completely dumbfounded. In a courtyard, a group of students, including the 3 newly transferred ones, wait in confusion. Suddenly, their new instructor presents himself before them with a smile. It is Sabigan, who welcomes them and announces he will be their instructor from now on. Confusion turns into indignation, especially for Go-Bu-uk, who explodes with rage. He screams, asking what the hell is going on, and complains that besides being suddenly moved from their class, they now have to put up with a bottom-tier instructor. He exclaims that he has no intention of obeying such a ridiculous order. An unperturbed Sabigan points out to Bu-uk that his choice of words toward the chief instructor is quite insolent. Bu-uk doubles down on the defiance, screaming at him to get lost and stating he has no intention of learning from a bastard who until recently couldn't even use internal arts. A smile forms on Sabigan's face as he invokes Article 3, Clause 5 of the Academy Rules. With a blink, he teleports in front of Bu-uk. Ah! A cry of agony escapes him while Sabigan calmly explains that the rule he cited allows him to punish cadets with bad behavior in order to guide them. Infuriated and humiliated, Bu-uk roars and launches an attack with all his power, unleashing his fist technique. The tiger and dragon mountain splitting fists, but Sabigan, with terrifying calm, lists Bu-uk's offenses. Swearing and using violence against a superior, and using internal arts during class without permission. As he effortlessly dodges Bu-uk's furious punches, he adds that worst of all is his pathetic skill in the martial arts. With blinding speed, he counters. With a flurry of precise and brutal strikes, the impact resonates loudly, and Bu-uk is sent flying through the air. Completely overwhelmed now, he lies on the ground, defeated and in pain, but Sabigan approaches and orders him to get up, stating that his guidance is not yet over. From a distance, Tang Lin and other students watch with mouths agape. Go-Bu-uk himself, ranked as the best among the new students in external arts training, is being defeated as easily as if he were a child. Filled with rage and humiliation, Bu-uk can only curse his instructor. Sabigan does not stop, attacking again and criticizing the deplorable state of his first class, and reminding Bu-uk that it is the role of the instructor to hold back tears and educate. He grabs him and continues the punishment. Just as he is about to continue, another student intervenes, declaring that his actions are a bit excessive against a cadet. Sabigan stops and turns toward him with a cunning smile, commenting that he has finally decided to make a move. Yeon Wook-hyun watches the entire scene with a somber and indecipherable expression. At that moment, his true importance in Sabigan's previous life is made clear. Yeon Wook-hyun was not just a cadet, but the future leader of the Heavenly Sword Alliance. Sabigan's mind travels to the past, to the memories of a world that no longer exists. He remembers Yeon Wook-hyun, the second son of the prestigious destructive sword clan. From a young age, he was recognized as a martial arts genius, and his skill at the Spring Dragon Academy was simply overwhelming. His talent was so immense that the academy itself seemed too small to contain him. At just 20 years old, he achieved the feat of becoming the youngest Supreme Peak Martial Master in history, placing himself among the top 10 of the Orthodox Alliance. He was destined for the brilliant life, revered as an absolute master in the Central Plains and admired by everyone. But that fate was cut short. The sudden appearance of the demons changed everything. From the early stages of the invasion, Yeon Wook-hyun fought in more battles than anyone, but his clan became the target of concentrated attacks and was annihilated. He was the sole survivor and watched with imposing rage as everything he knew went up in flames. Despite the pain and despair, he did not crumble. He traveled across the plains, fighting ceaselessly against the demons and gathering survivors, forming an allied force that transcended the barriers between orthodox and non-orthodox sects. In the most desperate situation, he led the remaining martial artists in one last brave resistance. Sabigan remembers it vividly. He remembers how Wook-hyun always charged at the vanguard, unleashing a dazzling sword energy that could strike down even the most massive demonic beasts in an instant. Without a doubt, he was the hero and the last hope of the Central Plains. However, now that hero is nothing more than another arrogant noble brat from a prestigious clan. The tension in the academy courtyard is palpable. Sabigan asks him if he has finally decided to make a move, calling him contemptuously young Master Yeon Wook-hyun. Wook-hyun returns the comment, finding the situation quite amusing. Sabigan asks him why and wonders if he is surprised by the fact that an assistant instructor who until recently couldn't use internal energy has suddenly become so strong. Wook-hyun admits it is unexpected, however he continues with disdain, saying it's pathetic that the only thing he'll do with that new power is show off in front of the cadets. His words deeply embarrass Go Bu-uk, who is still recovering from the beating. Wook-hyun stares at Sabigan and asks sarcastically if this sudden power is also due to some predestined encounter. Sabigan, recognizing his arrogance, asks him if he's curious and offers to tell him everything if he obeys his training. Wook-hyun rejects the offer flatly. He declares that he doesn't know what trick he used to change the class lists, but that he will file a formal complaint with the academy. He has no interest in learning from someone who has become arrogant because of a stroke of luck. With that, he turns around to leave. But Sabigan lets out a chuckle and asks Wook-hyun if he truly believes he has nothing to learn from him. In an instant, he moves and places a hand on the shoulder of the bewildered Tang Lin. Then he throws a challenge to Wook-hyun. He asks, what would happen if he told him that with only 10 days of his training, Tang Lin could become strong enough to beat him? Tang Lin's face transforms into a mask of pure panic. Wook-hyun stops dead, incredulous, asking Sabigan what he just said. With a defiant smile, Sabigan repeats it, asserting that after only 1 week of his training, that pathetic weakling whom Wook-hyun considers less than an insect will be able to chew him up and spit him out like it's nothing. Tang Lin tries to protest desperately, but Sabigan covers his mouth. Wook-hyun's face darkens and he sternly asks Sabigan if he is willing to take responsibility for his words. Sabigan responds with an enthusiastic, "Of course." Then he proposes the bet formally. In 10 days, Wook-hyun and Tang Lin will face each other in an official match. If Tang Lin wins, Wook-hyun must follow his training without resisting. If Wook-hyun wins, he can ask Sabigan for whatever he wants, to leave the academy, to kneel and beg, anything. Wook-hyun mocks the idea, saying there is nothing else he needs from him. However, he accepts the challenge and warns Sabigan to prepare for the fight. After sealing the pact, Wook-hyun leaves with a determined step, followed by other students. As soon as they leave, Tang Lin explodes in a panic attack, screaming and shaking Sabigan, asking him what the hell he has done and why he has put him in a fight against Yeon Wook-hyun. Sabigan, annoyed by the noise, knocks him down with a simple movement and cancels the class for the day, announcing that he will send them the new schedule tomorrow. While the other students walk away, Tang Lin is already on the ground, sobbing and lamenting his fate. Sabigan approaches again and reprimands him, telling him that he just has to win and asking him why he assumes he's going to lose. With a sigh, Tang Lin explains his sad history. He was humiliated in his first public match by Go Bu-uk, who has tormented him daily ever since. And most importantly, he reminds him that even that monster Go Bu-uk was defeated by Wook-hyun without being able to land a single blow. Sabigan admits that Wook-hyun's talent is exceptional. Tang Lin, even more desperate, asks him why he made the bet if he knew all that. With an enigmatic smile, Sabigan tells him not to worry. Then he looks at him intently and makes a statement that leaves him speechless. He assures him that he, Tang Lin, is stronger than Yeon Wook-hyun. Tang Lin, completely bewildered, can only ask, "Excuse me?" The thing is, Sabigan knows something that no one else can imagine. In his mind, he sees the hidden truth of that youth, the identity he had before the regression. The demon-slaying divine archer. Tang Lin screams in protest, unable to accept the situation. Although he understands he can't do anything about the sudden change of class and instructor, he can't comprehend why he, specifically he, has to face Yeon Wook-hyun in a public duel. Sabigan calmly explains that he still hasn't understood the full picture. He makes him see that his victory in that duel is necessary so that he, as an instructor, can prove his abilities. Tang Lin bursts in frustration, screaming that is Sabigan's problem and asking what he gains from being dragged into all this. With a sinister smile that reveals his sharp teeth, Sabigan offers him a powerful word: revenge. The word leaves Tang Lin stunned. Sabigan reminds him how he always took beatings from that big bastard, referring to Go Bu-uk. The young man froze, wondering how he could know that. Sabigan continues, asking him with ruthless intensity how it felt to see him give Bu-uk a beating. He asks if he felt excited, relieved, or even euphoric. Then his tone changes, becoming more incisive, and he asks if, on the contrary, he felt rage for not being able to take revenge with his own hands. That last question hits Tang Lin deep inside. Sabigan reminds him of his own words, that not even Go Buuk could touch a hair on Yeon Wook-hyun. Then he presents a tempting possibility. He asks, what would happen if he became strong enough to defeat Wook-hyun himself? If he achieved that, then even someone like him could easily take revenge on Buuk by himself. He offers him this opportunity as a great gift. Doubt and hope struggle across Tang's face. Finally, he makes a decision. If he truly can become as strong as Sabigan says, then he will do it. Sabigan assures him with total confidence that of course it's possible. However, Tang clarifies his true motivation. He tells him this no longer has anything to do with Go Buuk. What he really wants is simply to be stronger than he is now. Hearing this, a smile of satisfaction spreads across Sabigan's face, who accepts his determination and prepares to begin the training. The scene changes to a training courtyard where a wooden dummy waits. Sabigan tells Tang it's time to check his current skill level, and orders him to imagine he is fighting against Yeon Wook-hyun and to unleash his martial arts with all his power. Tang takes a deep breath and lunges into the attack, but his strikes are weak and barely leave a mark on the dummy. Sabigan yells at him to keep going, not to stop, and to attack with all his strength. Tang tries, pushing himself to the limit, but suddenly a sharp pain pierces him, and he collapses to the ground, coughing and out of breath. Sabigan looks at him with disdain and calls him pathetic. Catching his breath, Tang explains his persistent problem. Every time he tries to execute basic movements, his internal energy disperses for no apparent reason. He confesses he first thought he was learning his clan's techniques incorrectly, but his movements were correct. Then, he suspected a problem in his dantian or his meridians, but multiple checkups in his clan found nothing. He has resigned himself to thinking he lacked talent or suffered from an unknown disease. Sabigan corrects him with a smile. He reveals that his problem is something else. Your meridian points are further apart than those of most people. The revelation leaves Tang Lin speechless. Sabigan proceeds to explain that, while that is normally a rare and advantageous constitution, in his case, it is a problem due to his youth and his meager internal energy. He reminds him that martial artists release energy from their dantian through their meridian points. Since his meridians are wider and his energy is mediocre, the power does not concentrate properly and disperses along the way. Tang is amazed. It's the first time he's heard anything like that. Sabigan adds that it makes sense no one knew, because it's information that he himself heard by pure coincidence, on a battlefield in his past life. Beside the fallen bodies of warriors, for a moment, Tang perceives a deep history hidden behind his instructor's gaze. But Sabigan cuts the moment short, saying that now that they know the problem, it's time to solve it. With a smile, he puts an arm over his shoulders and assures him that the solution is actually very simple. The problem is the lack of power in his wide meridians, so the solution is to increase your amount of internal energy. Since they don't have time for that, there is only one method he can teach him. He gives him a key instruction. He must keep accumulating internal energy until the precise moment before starting his movements. Once he has gathered enough, he must release it all at once. Tang Lin follows the order, concentrates his energy, and his eyes shine with a power he had never felt before. He lunges at the dummy with a spinning movement, and with a single blow, the head of the training dummy goes flying through the air. Euphoric and breathless, he shouts to his instructor, asking if he saw that, celebrating that his internal energy finally didn't disperse. Sabigan, with indifferent calm, tells him he saw it and that he can rest easy before collapsing. Tang protests, claiming that never in his life had he felt so full of energy. But mid-sentence, his eyes roll back and he collapses unconscious. Tang regains consciousness, looking at a clear blue sky. Confused, he wonders why he suddenly collapsed. While he is still on the ground completely exhausted, Sabigan approaches and asks how he feels. With a weak voice, Tang tells his instructor that he has no strength left in his body. Sabigan calmly explains that it is a minor side effect, a reaction from his body not being adapted to channeling all his power for the first time. He assures him it is nothing serious, and that the effects will disappear naturally after a few months. Tang sighs in relief at first, but his instructor's words suddenly resonate in his mind. Panic takes hold of him. A few months? But the duel is in just 1 week. An unperturbed Sabigan begins the real lecture. He explains to Tang that he currently faces 2 main problems. The first is that his new single-strike technique consumes all the energy he has accumulated, and his body, unable to withstand the recoil, simply shuts down. The second problem is that his energy core is too small to store power in advance for a long time. Trying to do so could lead to a chi deviation, which is absolutely forbidden. He asks if he has understood so far, and Tang, though worried, remains confused. Tang asks what all this has to do with the stick Sabagan is holding, but the instructor tells him not to worry about unimportant details. Instead, he presents the central dilemma. Since he can only begin storing energy when the duel starts, how does he plan to survive? Sabigan asks how long it took to gather the power for his single strike. Tang calculates it was about 7 minutes. Sabigan's next question leaves Tang frozen. How does he plan to hold out for 7 minutes against a genius like Yeon Wook-hyun? The young man has no answer. Sabigan reveals the only possible solution. With a maniacal shout, he tells him he will have to dodge as if his life depended on it until he has gathered all the necessary energy. And without warning, the training begins. Sabigan lunges at him, striking him mercilessly with the wooden stick. Tang, surprised and in pain, shouts asking what his instructor is doing. He only orders him to concentrate, to start gathering energy, and to not look away from his weapon. Sabigan uses an illusion technique to deceive Tang, who is struck with force. While he groans on the ground, Sabigan scolds him for complaining when he hasn't even used internal energy for the strikes. He orders him to get up to continue. Tang, incredulous and in pain, protests, asking if this can even be called training. Sabigan coldly confirms it is training for dodging, to which Tang cannot help but think how twisted he is. Stopping for a moment, Sabigan faces him seriously. He asks if he really thinks he is doing this just to intimidate him. He reminds him that he has already explained his weakness, shown him the solution, and demonstrated it. He guarantees that this method, brutal as it may be, is the only way he can even graze Wook-hyun in a week. He admits the training is painful and hard, but immediately asks if it is harder than the humiliations he has suffered at the hands of Go Bu-uk and Yeon Wook-hyun. With a piercing gaze, he challenges him, asking if he is really going to waste this perfect opportunity to prove his worth to everyone who has treated him like trash. Sabigan's words hit the mark. Determination hardens Tang's gaze, who clenches his fist and grips his sword firmly. He apologizes to the instructor and asks him to continue with the training, declaring with fervor that he can endure an entire day if necessary. Sabigan mocks the idea of an entire day, and with a demented smile, informs him that the training will continue non-stop for the entire remaining week. Terror is etched on Tang's face, just as his instructor lunges at him once more, shouting, "Here I go!" A week later, the day of the duel has arrived. A large crowd gathers in the arena where Wook-hyun and a Tanglin, covered in bandages, prepare to fight. In the stands, skepticism is general. One student wonders how long the weakling will hold out. Convinced he will be defeated in a single move, another cadet comments that the only thing he saw Tang do during the week was take a beating with a stick, which leads Bu-uk to call him an idiot for falling into a scammer's trap. At that moment, Yeon Wook-hyun addresses instructor Sabigan. He adds a new condition to the bet. If he wins, Sabigan must leave the academy on his own, as he doesn't want to waste time like this again. Without hesitation, Sabigan accepts, swearing it on his name. After confirming that Wook-hyun remembers the terms of his defeat, Sabigan smiles at him and points out a mistake. He tells him that the person he should focus on isn't him, but Tanglin, who is waiting for him in the arena with the combatants ready. Sabigan, acting as judge, establishes the rules. Victory will be decided by surrender, loss of consciousness, or if the weapon is dropped, with lethal blows strictly prohibited. With an intense gaze between the two youths, Sabigan gives the order, and the duel begins. In the duel arena, instructor Sabigan signals the start. Yeon Wook-hyun remains impassive, but a blink unleashes blinding speed. A deadly strike descends upon Tanglin, who can barely react. However, at the last instant, the strike stops, and only a drop of blood wells from his cheek. Confused, Tang watches as the image of his own arm is reflected in the clear sky. Wook-hyun, with an icy voice, tells him to surrender. Tang is paralyzed, and upon checking his arm, he realizes that he is completely unharmed. Wook-hyun looks at him with disdain, calling him a fool for accepting a match when he stands trembling before a simple display of killing intent. Tang finally understands the immense pressure he just felt. A terrifying realization hits him. If Wook-hyun had really wanted to, he could have killed him in that instant. The abyss of power between them fills him with despair. He thinks it's impossible to win, that someone as terrible as him couldn't defeat the Academy's best with only 1 week of training. But then, Sabigan's voice resonates in his mind, calling him by his name. Despair fades, replaced by the memory of his own determination. He reminds himself of his true desire, the reason he accepted this hell, the longing to become stronger than ever. Wook-hyun, irritated by his silence, calls him an idiot, and warns him that he already gave him a chance to leave unharmed, but that he himself wasted it. He lunges into the attack, this time with real speed and power. However, to his total surprise, Tang reacts in time, blocking the blow. Wook-hyun is bewildered, wondering how he was able to react in time. A cold sweat runs down Tang, who feels like the chi he had accumulated was about to disperse from the impact. Recognizing that his opponent has learned something, Wook-hyun decides to get serious, presenting the first technique of the Supreme Dragon Blinding Heavenly Sword. Torrent of the Berserker Dragon's Fury. A devastating flurry of blue sword energy slashes heads toward Tang. The power of the attack is overwhelming, but as he dodges it, a strange sensation invades him. He realizes that for some reason this attack is easier to dodge than he expected. The crowd watches in amazement. Wook-hyun, now visibly frustrated, decides to end the match once and for all. But for his next move, the third technique of his sword art, Twin Dragon Fang Break. But seeing Wook-hyun's stance, Tang is paralyzed again, not out of fear but from an even greater shock. This sword technique is exactly the same one instructor Sabigan used to strike him relentlessly all week long. The memory of his brutal training floods his mind. Every strike, every movement, every attack pattern from Wook-hyun is identical to what he endured over and over. Thanks to this, he can predict and dodge the attacks of the genius with disconcerting ease. The surprise is total on Wook-hyun's face. He cannot understand how Tang is dodging his technique. The crowd murmurs, unable to believe what they are witnessing. Tang, Lin the weakling, is holding off the great Yeon Wook-hyun, who finally steps back, bewildered. Wook-hyun grips his weapon and addresses Tang. With a new seriousness, he apologizes for having called him an idiot and admits that he has learned a lot in the last week. However, he declares that he does not know the sword technique Tang is using, but that he will now use his own. Enveloped in an aura of celestial energy, he prepares for his ultimate attack. The fierce dragon's annihilation. He throws one last challenge. If he can dodge this attack, he will admit defeat. A gigantic and violent vortex of blue sword energy forms around him, astounding everyone present. Buyuk can only curse that crazy bastard for unleashing such power. But instead of preparing to dodge or run, Tang Lin, with an eerie calm, begins to walk directly toward the center of the sword storm, leaving everyone wondering where the hell he is going. In the quiet before the duel, Sabigan approaches an exhausted Tang Lin. He comments that he has been dodging well and that now he might have a chance. Tang, still recovering, wonders if that training will really allow him to dodge all of Yeon Wook-hyun's attacks. Sabigan bluntly responds no. Surprise and panic take hold of Tang, who doesn't understand the apparent contradiction. The instructor calmly explains that Yeon Wook-hyun is no fool. At first, he will probably underestimate him, but if Tang manages to dodge his attacks continuously, Wook-hyun will devise countermeasures. Sabigan continues, warning that if Tang survives to that point, it is very likely Wook-hyun will use his most powerful technique, the fierce dragon's annihilation. He describes this ability as a large-scale sword art that materializes the appearance of a fierce dragon and creates massive sword ki. He warns Tang that it is useless to try to dodge it by jumping or retreating, as the technique will instantly expand and engulf the entire stadium. A desperate Tang asks how he could face something like that, considering it unbeatable. But Sabigan firmly corrects him, stating that nothing in this world is unbeatable. He reveals the weakness of the fierce dragon's annihilation. Although it looks like a storm of sword chi reshaping in all directions, it is not a perfect martial art. Its true purpose is to annihilate the majority of enemies who, taken by surprise by its incredible strength, try to flee. A revelation illuminates Tang's mind, who asks if that means what he thinks. With a twisted smile, Sabigan confirms it. There is only one way out. Instead of retreating, he must keep moving forward. Sabigan explains the strategy. Of course, a genius like Yeon Wook-hyun will try to respond immediately. After realizing his technique has been figured out, however, in that position, his reaction will simply be an instinctive response, a reaction of surprise. He tells Tang that will be the moment to use all the accumulated rage he has suppressed for so long and land a blow on that arrogant bastard. Time seems to stand still. They used an attack of an attack. The spectators in the stands remain stunned. Wook-hyun, although standing, admits his defeat, however. Sabigan, with a closed fist, intervenes as judge and declares that the duel has ended in a draw. Wook-hyun insists that he lost, but Sabigan, with a smug smile, explains to him that this is what it feels like to be completely overwhelmed. He lays out the situation. The soul of one combatant is broken, while the other is incapacitated to continue fighting. Therefore, as the referee, his decision is firm. The official duel between Yeon Wook-hyun and Tang Lin is a draw. Sabigan claps and announces that since it is a draw, the promise they made is void, and invites the crowd to applaud both contenders as Wook-hyun, visibly upset, approaches and asks him what the hell he is trying to do. He questions if his goal wasn't simply to have him participate in class, or if instead he sought to wound his pride with such a low method. With total indifference, Sabigan tells him to think what he wants as long as his insignificant pride remains intact. He clarifies that he has no intention of forcing anyone to receive his teachings if they do not wish to. Approaching, he whispers to him to choose. He makes him see the situation. One student is unconscious, practically dead, while the other sits there sulking. He reminds him that it was Tang Lin who, of his own free will, chose to fight. At that moment, Tang slightly regains consciousness and, with a weak voice, apologizes to his instructor for not being able to win. Sabigan helps him up, supporting him on his shoulder, and asks him how he felt. Tang, still dazed, doesn't understand the question. From the stands, the crowd erupts in cheers and applause. Even Go Bu-uk and the other students watch with a mixture of wonder and respect. Sabigan leans toward Tang and repeats the question with a smile, wanting to know if he found the experience exciting. After a moment of silence, Tang's face lights up with pure understanding and joy, and he responds with a resounding and energetic, "Yes, yes." Later, in the new classroom, the troublemakers, now his disciples, including a pensive Yeon Wook-hyun, sit waiting. Sabigan enters with his wooden staff behind his back, observing them all with a satisfied smile. He announces the beginning of the first class. In the offices of the Spring Dragon Academy, the frustration was palpable. Vice President Seong-yoon Sung struck the table with his fist, cursing those damn brats. He couldn't understand how those who until a moment ago were on his side had now turned against him. With his face distorted by rage, he asks how things had reached this point. Jong-won-jin complained to them, reminding them that they had trusted them and entrusted them with their plans. He demanded an explanation, as the main goal was to get Sabigan to leave voluntarily. He responded, clearing his throat nervously. Won-jin continued, saying that instead of that, the cadets now follow Sabigan of their own free will and wondered what was happening. Another instructor added with growing panic that this was especially true of Tang Lin of the One-Star Sword Clan and Yeon Wook-hyun of the Yeon Clan. Both insisted firmly on continuing their training under Sabigan's tutelage. Jong-won-jin brought up the idea of forcing them to change classes again like last time, but the situation was more complicated. They informed Won-jin that the cadets had gone as far as threatening to withdraw from the academy and report the matter to the powerful Yeon clan. The room filled with recriminations. An instructor shouted that they should never have entrusted a genius like Yeon Wook-hyun to a simple rookie, declaring that the academy's reputation was at stake and demanding that Seong take responsibility for the disaster. Fed up with the accusations, Seong-yoon Sung exploded and assured them they shouldn't try to blame him. He snapped that they shouldn't try to blame only him, calling them parasites who were also desperate to earn the favor of the Yeon clan with contempt. He asked them if they were really saying that Yeon Wook-hyun had lost to a wretch from a low-ranking clan. One of the instructors clarified that technically, Yeon Wook-hyun had withdrawn, but according to the cadets who witnessed the duel, it had essentially been a defeat. Seong's incredulity reached its peak, screamingly reminding them that Yeon Wook-hyun was one of the greatest prodigies the great Yeon clan had ever seen. Once tempers cooled, Seong reflected to himself. He recognized that the more he learned about Sabigan, the less he understood him and concluded he couldn't leave them unmonitored any longer. Suddenly he remembered something and turned to one of his subordinates, asking if they had received news from the Phantom Shadow unit yet. The instructor informed him they hadn't heard anything since the group of assassins said they would review his request. Seong clicked his tongue with disdain, indignant that a simple group of mercenaries dared to act with such arrogance. Suddenly, an icy voice emerged from the shadows, warning him to be more careful with his words than his actions. Startled, Seong and Daeom Buijun turned abruptly, demanding to know who was there. But before they could react, a masked assassin had already materialized behind them. The assassin mocked him, calling his question stupid. Seong couldn't believe it. He was a renowned martial arts master, and yet he hadn't sensed his presence at all. The assassin reminded them they had just been talking about them, and with a reveal, the rest of the Phantom Shadow Unit squad appeared in the room, announcing they were there to fulfill the request. Their leader, the assassin known as Phantom Shadow Number 1, or of Night, told him more about that man Sabagon. Far from there, members of the Phantom Shadow Unit had already begun their own investigation. Phantom Shadow Number 1 observed a portrait of Sabagon, wondering why they were spending 100 nyong just to investigate a rookie instructor. He commented ironically that for a place with such a bad reputation, the academy seemed to be swimming in money, which only proved how corrupt they were. Beside him, Phantom Shadow Number 7 mocked the hypocrisy of the orthodox sects that pretended to be virtuous while secretly ordering investigations into their own subordinates. However, Phantom Shadow Number 5 replied cynically, asking if they were any better for accepting such pathetic requests for a bit of money. The leader's voice rang out harshly, asking Number 5 if he had forgotten his mission. He reminded him of the oath they made. They would endure any task, no matter how dirty or despicable, until they found and served that person. Ashamed, Number 5 apologized immediately. The leader forgave him, ordering him to focus on the mission instead. He wondered if they should also investigate Jin Beck, the man who had supposedly raised him. For the moment, however, the order was clear. Locate and surveil the target. Phantom Shadow Number 7 asked if the leader believed the rumor that Sabagon had a predestined encounter. The leader dismissed it as nonsense, but his subordinate insisted, laying out the facts. It was said that Sabagon could not use internal energy, and overnight, he turned into a martial arts master. If it wasn't a predestined encounter, he wondered what else it could be. He suggested the possibility that Sabagon had hidden sponsors or that he had infiltrated the academy as an agent of a hostile faction. The leader concluded those were likely their clients' suspicions, and the reason they had been hired, which meant the target could be much more dangerous than they expected. He warned his men to be extremely cautious and not get discovered. Number 5 laughed, confident that no matter how strong the target was, he wouldn't be able to detect the stealth techniques of the Phantom Shadow Unit. With everything discussed, the leader gave the order to begin. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the academy, Sabagon was walking with Jin Beck by a pond. Jin Beck commented that lately they had been hearing a lot about him, and that everything he had heard had surprised him. He asked with concern if he was sure he would be okay, as it seemed people were starting to move against him. Sabagon, with unshakable calm, responded that envy and jealousy always follow the path of heroes, and there was nothing to worry about. Jin Beck sighed, thinking to himself that Sabagon's predestined encounter must have been truly extraordinary to have changed him so much. He remembered that it all started with that duel against Maon Seong-dok, an event he admitted had honestly left him stunned. Sabagon laughed, acknowledging that even to him it seemed a bit excessive. Jin Beck warned him that if he had lost GEU duel, it would have been a disaster, as it was evident Vice Director Seong was trying to get rid of him. Jin Beck fell silent before thinking about the truth. He thought about how, in reality, he was indeed kicked out, before he regressed in time. He remembered his past life, how he was brutally defeated by Maon Seong-dok. Stripped of his position and demoted to performing menial labor, unable to bear the humiliation, he fled the academy and wandered aimlessly for a time, with no way to earn a living. He ended up working as an escort warrior, Despite still being unable to use internal energy, he trained his physical and spear techniques to the point of exhaustion, surviving numerous dangerous missions and bandit attacks. After more than 10 years, he became a top-tier warrior, traveling to every corner of the Central Plains and forging a vast network of contacts. One day, out of nostalgia, he decided to visit the Spring Dragon Academy, and it was that very night when the demonic invasion began. Back in the present, Sabagan abruptly threw a stone toward some dry bushes, and Jin Beck, surprised, asked him why he had done it. Sabagan responded with indifference that he had seen an ugly frog and couldn't help himself. Jin Beck jokingly reprimanded him for trying to hurt a poor frog, to which Sabagan responded laughing, reminding him if he had already forgotten how Jin Beck himself used to feed him frogs as medicine when he was a child. Hidden in the bushes, Phantom Shadow number 7 rubbed a bruised eye, complaining that the crazy bastard had suddenly thrown a rock at him. Beside him, number 5 asked if he was okay, and both wondered if it was possible they had already been discovered. Number 5 dismissed the idea, suggesting they just had bad luck. Suddenly, his companion questioned the unit's technique, and he quickly apologized with more confidence. They watched as Sabagan headed to his quarters and decided to continue the surveillance. In his room, Sabagan reflected with satisfaction. He had secured his future heroes, thus completing his first objective after the regression. His thoughts then turned toward the future, and with a serious look, he wondered if the time had finally come to bring her. If his memory didn't fail him, at this precise moment she should be... His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Without getting up, he indicated the door was open and for them to enter. Wook-hyun appeared in the doorway, amazed because he was apparently expected. Sabagan, reclining in his chair, commented that it was just as he expected, as he imagined he would already be restless. Wook-hyun looked at him with disdain and asked what he wanted, complaining about the unpleasant expression on his face. In the quiet of his quarters, Sabagan addressed his unexpected visitor with an ironic smile, asking what brought the young master of the prestigious Yeon destructive sword clan to such a humble place. Yeon Wook-hyun, confused by the tone, took a moment to respond, and getting straight to the point, he wanted to talk about the previous fight. With a sigh, he began to explain his thoughts. He explained to Sabagan that during the combat, Tang Lin had been able to respond, albeit clumsily, to all the basic movements of his supreme heavenly sword. At first, Wook-hyun had thought it was simply the result of an intense week of training, but upon reflection, he realized Tang's movements went beyond mere momentary responses. It was as if his opponent knew in advance all the movements and trajectories of his sword technique. Sabagan's smile widened with a piercing gaze. His eyes burning with certainty, Yeon Wook-hyun accused him directly. He stated that the only person who could have taught Tang Lin the sword paths unique to his clan, the supreme heavenly sword, had to have been him. He immediately demanded to know how it was possible for an outsider to know the martial arts of the Yeon clan in such detail. Sabagan responded evasively, shrugging his shoulders and suggesting that the martial arts of such a renowned clan were quite famous among warriors. But Wook-hyun was not deceived and ordered him to stop joking. He assured him that the knowledge demonstrated was not superficial and asked if he truly thought the heir of the clan was unable to tell the difference. Sabagan's expression turned serious. He admitted that of course he expected Wook-hyun to notice, and that he would have been very disappointed if he hadn't. When the young man tried to press further, Sabagan interrupted him with a sharp, "Enough!" He told him to be more honest if he truly wished to be his disciple, as he knew that was not the real reason for his visit. Yeon Wook-hyun's true curiosity, the one that had brought him there, was to confirm if he also knew the flaws of the supreme heavenly sword, those same flaws that Wook-hyun himself had sensed. The revelation left Wook-hyun speechless. Sabagan continued explaining that, although his clan's sword technique was perfected hundreds of years ago, and is acclaimed as the greatest in the Central Plains for its destructive power and unpredictable trajectories, it was not perfect. He told Wook-hyun that from a very young age, thanks to his extraordinary talent, he had realized an uncomfortable truth. The supreme heavenly sword was not an unbeatable martial art. However, as the heir of the clan, he could never openly acknowledge it. Visibly shaken, Wook-hyun asked if he was mocking his clan's martial arts. Sabagan replied that he could think what he wanted, but he gave him a solemn warning. He told him that in the near future, a day would come when everything martial artists revered, tradition, honor, nobility, and reputation, would lose all meaning. He approached him and, with overwhelming intensity, told him he should only think of one thing: becoming stronger than he is now and casting aside, without hesitation, everything that stood in his way. After the intense conversation, Sabigan relaxed and told him they would have time to talk about that later. For now, he advised him to simply follow his instincts while Yeon Wook-hyun processed it all. He noticed with confusion as Sabigan suddenly picked up a wooden pillow. With a carefree smile, Sabigan downplayed it, saying there was just an annoying frog outside. With a swift movement, he threw the pillow out the window. Meanwhile, in the darkness outside, the assassin squad of the Phantom Shadow Unit continued their surveillance. Their leader reviewed the information they had on the master of the recovery pavilion, Jin Baek. He was a competent physician who had arrived at the academy 5 years ago, but he knew next to no martial arts and didn't seem to have a relevant background. They investigated him for being the person closest to Sabigan, but he seemed like a simple doctor, although his flawless past seemed somewhat artificial. Suddenly, the leader interrupted himself upon seeing the pitiful state of his subordinate, number 7, who appeared with a black eye, a bleeding nose, and a bandaged head. Stammering, he explained that a pillow had just come flying out of the room and hit him. The leader asked if they were sure they hadn't been discovered. Number 5 told him no. Sabigan didn't seem remotely suspicious of them. But number 7, on the verge of tears, insisted he was sure they had been discovered. However, his superior reprimanded him, ordering him not to doubt his clan's techniques, and that he had simply had bad luck. He told him to endure it, as he had been through worse. The battered assassin could only accept the order with resignation. Later, still in pain, number 7 warned that the next time something came flying out, he wouldn't hold back and would personally decapitate the person responsible. His companion tried to calm him down, assuring him they had already moved away from that area. However, just as he was joking about the possibility of their target deciding to practice archery, they had to hide again upon seeing Sabigan come out into the courtyard. Sabigan complained loudly about his urge to pee from having drunk too much, stopping right in front of the bushes where the assassins were hiding. To their absolute horror, he proceeded to relieve himself on them, soaking them completely. Unable to contain himself any longer, number 7 jumped out of the bushes, screaming in a rage. What the hell was Sabigan doing? Holding a teapot, he turned with an innocent smile and offered them a cup of tea. Understanding that he had been the subject of a deliberate mockery, the assassin's rage exploded. He unsheathed his blade, and shouting that he would kill him, he lunged into the attack. However, his blade stopped dead, crashing against a purple energy barrier that materialized around Sabigan and shattering into pieces. The impact threw him backward. But before he could fall, Sabigan caught him by the face and slammed him brutally against the ground. With his face splattered with blood and a sinister smile, he greeted them formally, confirming it was a pleasure to meet them. Phantom Shadow Unit. As assassin number 7 lay unconscious on the ground, his companion number 5 shouted his name in desperation. Sabigan loomed over the defeated body, clicking his tongue in disapproval. He commented mockingly that this is what happens to them for meddling in others' business. Addressing his dear friends of the Phantom Shadow Unit, he offered. Number 5 called him a bastard and unsheathed his weapon, but before he could attack, the authoritative voice of his leader, number 1, ordered him to stop. The leader emerged from the shadows and stood before Sabigan, greeting him formally. He expressed his surprise upon realizing that their target had indeed already discovered them. Sabigan confirmed with a smug smile that he was indeed the one they had been following. Then, with barely concealed contempt, he called him the leader of those frogs. He asked him if he really thought it was right to reveal his identity in front of the person they were surveilling. The leader of the assassin clan called the question stupid, asserting with cold confidence that if he eliminated him at that very moment, there would be no problem. Sabigan let out a loud laugh. He asked if he was truly okay with that, and if he didn't feel at least a little curiosity to know how he knew all their secrets. The assassin responded that he would find out very soon, and with palpable killing intent, informed him that he would start by cutting off his limbs one by one before lunging into the attack. A rain of pink energy blades surged towards Sabigan. However, he remained impassive, conjuring a series of blue and red mana swords that intercepted and destroyed the assassin's assault with staggering ease. Seeing that his ranged attack was useless, the leader lunged with a sword shrouded in a reddish aura. But Sabigan, with blinding speed, stopped the strike dead using only his fingers, while Sabigan maintained a twisted smile. The assassin leader continued attacking. With lightning speed, a combination of mana swords and physical strikes that failed to produce any effect, Sabigan coldly analyzed his opponent's style. Although it lacked Yeon Wook-hyun's destructive power, it was fast, precise, and lethal. Each of his techniques was a deadly strike aimed at vital points. The energy density in his sword was overwhelming, to the point where a normal barrier would not contain it, and he wouldn't be able to deflect it with a simple hand sword. The leader, now on the defensive, recognized to himself that Sabigan's power and style were strange, fundamentally different from the arts of the orthodox sects. He concluded it was impossible for him to have had that power by chance and asked him if it was demonic arts. Sabigan mocked the idea, asking him if he had ever seen demonic arts in person. He reminded him that the demonic cult had fallen years ago, and that what he used had nothing to do with them, although he admitted they weren't conventional martial arts either. The leader then understood that Sabigan was not someone they could simply subdue. Unleashing all his power, a monstrous green aura in the shape of a beast emanated from him. He declared that although he had nothing personal against him, he would take his life. It was the total power of the Phantom Shadow unit unleashed for the sake of his mission. With a stomp, he launched an attack that tore through the ground, moving through the trees. It was the Soul Destroyer technique, an exclusive movement technique that erased the user's presence and moved them at high speed to confuse the opponent. For an instant, Sabigan appeared bewildered. In that fraction of a second, the assassin appeared behind his back, executing the Phantom Soul Flash. A strike so fast it was impossible to perceive. Blood splattered in the air. Sabigan had been wounded in the shoulder. However, when the assassin looked at his work, he realized his hand was passing through an afterimage. It was an illusion. The real Sabigan appeared by his side. With a devastating punch, he sent him flying through the air. While number 5 helped his leader up, the latter asked incredulously how he had done it. Sabigan mocked them, asking if they truly took that much pride in their stealth skills. Activating a search spell, his eyes glowed with a purple light, and he revealed to them that to him, they were as visible as day, their bodies highlighted like heat auras. With his opponents defeated, he asked if they could now have a deeper conversation. Sabigan, seeing the leader bruised and beaten, corrected himself. He was not the lord of the Phantom Shadow unit, but the acting head of the Soul Origin sect. The Soul Origin sect was a mysterious organization, a ghost in the Jianghu that never appeared at official events, whose affiliation and goals were shrouded in absolute secrecy. Decades ago, a massacre annihilated the entire direct bloodline of the sect, including its leader, an event that went unnoticed by most, but the most elite members knew the truth. The survivors of that tragedy resurfaced under the new name of the Phantom Shadow Unit, becoming a top-tier mercenary organization that accepted dirty and dangerous missions, all with a single goal: the restoration of the fallen Soul Origin sect. That was the true mission they spoke of. The leader couldn't believe it. The history of his sect was a state secret that had never been leaked. It was impossible for Sabigan to know it. Sabigan, ignoring his astonishment, got straight to the point. He proposed a deal. If they fulfilled 2 missions for him, he would give them the information they had been chasing all this time. The offer left the leader dumbfounded. And then he shouted at him, asking if he dared to gut the descendants after they had spent 20 years scouring the world with a shred of hope. He demanded to know if he even understood what they were looking for. Sabigan answered him, the blood of the Origin sect, but he corrected himself with chilling precision, specifying that they sought a unique lineage capable of fully inheriting the sect's martial arts, a lineage categorized by a strange birthmark on the left wrist. The leader froze. That was the truth, the core of their sect's restoration and the reason for their long search, a secret only a few chosen ones within the sect knew. Stunned, he asked how he could know. Sabigan cut him off, telling him that was all he would say for now. He gave him a choice: accept his request and get the information, or waste the rest of his life following people. As an alternative, he began to conjure another spell, asking if they preferred to continue the previous fight. Defeated and without options, the leader knelt and accepted the mission. However, he warned him with a clenched fist that if they discovered Sabigan had deceived them, He swore he would make him pay with everything he had. With a triumphant smile, Sabagan accepted his terms and prepared to entrust him with his first mission. Under the veil of night, a macabre scene stained the ground of a fortress. Corpses of bandits and missing elders, their bodies mutilated and covered in blood. In the midst of the carnage, a woman knelt over one of the few survivors. A man who, between death rattles, begged her to stop, panting with desperation. The man felt a strange purple energy emanating from the woman's hand as it covered his face. The energy invaded him, causing indescribable pain as his life faded away. The woman watched him with absolute coldness while he screamed in agony. The woman confirmed the man's identity. He was Ma Ho, the vice leader of the Black Scorpion Gang, also known as the Demon of Destructive Combat. She reminded her victim that a month ago, he and his subordinates had attacked that very place, murdering all the men and outraging the women. The survivors of that massacre had hired her to ensure he paid for his crimes. The man cursed her through his teeth. Suddenly he felt with panic as his internal energy vanished. Unable to gather it, he couldn't understand what was happening. It made no sense. Ma Ho, impossible. He reminded her that he was the vice leader of the Black Scorpion Gang. But the woman told him he had literally just said that while the man begged for her to wait and she unsheathed her sword, and without a shred of doubt ended his life. After fulfilling her mission, the woman exhaled a sigh of relief. At that moment, a carrier pigeon arrived at her window. She took it and unrolled the parchment tied to its leg, wondering if it was her next assignment. Her expression changed upon reading the content. The mission was to investigate an instructor from the Spring Dragon Academy, a certain Sabagan. Meanwhile, at the academy, the training of the new disciples continued under Sabagan's watchful and severe gaze. One of the students, his body aching, complained about the exhausting exercise. His instructor told him again to stop talking nonsense, to release the tension, spread his legs, and adjust the angle of his wrist. Despite the effort, the student couldn't maintain the posture, and Sabagan ordered him to repeat the movement 200 more times. Frustrated, the student cursed aloud. Sabagan, irritated by his disrespectful attitude, asked him if he was being insolent toward his teaching methods. Before he could punish him, the young man asked him to wait, and, pointing to Yeon Wook-hyun, asked him why he wasn't forcing him to do anything. From a distance, Yeon Wook-hyun remained standing motionless with his eyes closed in a state of deep meditation. Sabagan explained to the student that his companion was fine on his own. The indignant student replied that he wasn't doing anything, wondering if he was perhaps sleeping. Sabagan, losing his patience, shouted at him, asking if he thought Wook-hyun was at his same level, and ordered him to shut up and swing his sword with more effort. Cursing under his breath, the student obeyed. Sabagan observed Yeon Wook-hyun with satisfaction. He knew the young genius was reflecting on their previous conversation. He told him silently not to let himself be bound by the original techniques of the Supreme Heavenly Sword, but to follow the swordsmanship his own senses guided him toward, trusting that his talent would lead him to a superior level. In another corner of the courtyard, Tang Lin approached his instructor timidly. Sabagan asked him if he had already completed his ki circulation. Tang responded negatively, admitting he was still worried and doubting if he could really do what he had been ordered and circulate his ki in that way. Sabagan assured him there was no other way to solve his problem, but by accumulating enough internal energy, unless, he joked, he was hiding rare elixirs. Tang, embarrassed, denied having such treasures. With that, Sabagan gave him a clear order. Apart from eating and sleeping, keep your ki circulating constantly. As Tang walked away to obey, Sabagan reflected on his situation. He knew the young man felt pressured, conscious that his victory in the duel against Wook-hyun was due to mere tricks. It was a problem that couldn't be solved immediately, but Sabagan had other more urgent matters to attend to. He wondered if 10 days had already passed since he gave the mission to the Phantom Shadow unit. If he didn't receive news soon, his plans could get complicated. Just at that moment, he ran into instructor Daeom Bui-jun. Despite Sabagan's polite greeting, Daeom's expression was one of pure contempt. Daeom pointed out that he didn't seem pleased to see him and asked why he had made that face. Sabagan explained that he was busy with his class and that he was disturbing him. Daeom explained mockingly that all he was doing was wandering around. Daeom, hardly containing himself, thought that if it weren't for what he had witnessed that day, he would have already put him in his place. Leaving that aside, he ordered him to go to the main hall immediately. as Vice Director Seong Yoon-sung wanted to see him. Upon arrival, Seong greeted him with fake cordiality. Sabigan responded with the same tone, assuring him that things had been going wonderfully and that teaching such talented cadets had made him feel the value of being a superior instructor, sarcastically thanking him for creating such an exceptional class. Seong, clearing his throat to hide his irritation, told him it was a relief to know he was doing well. He reminded him that the Spring Dragon Academy was under the Orthodox Alliance, and that due to his lack of experience, the Alliance seemed to have many concerns about his recent promotion to superior instructor. Sabigan, with a mocking smile, asked if the hateful Alliance was really that interested in a simple instructor like him. Just then, a female voice interrupted him, asking him to be respectful. A woman with a slender and elegant figure entered the room. She greeted Sabigan and introduced herself as Mei Xiaoyang, sent by the Inspection Department of the Orthodox Alliance. Sabigan was momentarily speechless. After an awkward pause, he apologized with a laugh, saying he had been captivated by her beauty. Inspector May accepted the compliment with a polite smile. Seong explained in a low voice that she was a rising master within the Alliance, a prodigy who had reached the peak realm at an unprecedented age. He warned Sabigan not to act rashly and to be respectful. Sabigan responded with a loud smile and a common, "Of course." With the formalities concluded, he turned his attention back to the leader of the Phantom Shadow Unit, who was waiting for his orders. He told him it was fine, and that he would now give him his first mission. He asked him if he knew the assassin known as the soul-stealing Heavenly Maiden. The leader was surprised. He responded that although he didn't understand why he brought up her name, of course he knew her. She was a solo assassin, famous for never having failed an assignment. Although he had never seen her in person, it was rumored that her targets were found with the life completely sucked out of their bodies, and that she was a beauty without equal. The leader asked him if the mission was to kill her. With a sinister smile, Sabigan responded no. His mission was to summon the soul-stealing Heavenly Maiden and bring her to the Spring Dragon Academy. The leader, completely bewildered, he could only stutter, "What?" Sabigan ordered him to tell Cheon Seong-yoon that due to unforeseen circumstances, they had to cancel the assignment immediately. In the office of Cheon, the leader of the Phantom Shadow Unit, informed him of the cancellation. The vice director, furious, shouted, "What are you saying?" and called him irresponsible. The assassin apologized, claiming an urgent matter had arisen, but that in exchange, he would introduce someone perfect for the job. As an additional apology, he offered to pay the commission himself. The leader, speaking with Sabigan, stated that as he had already told him, he could do it for previous missions. However, he wondered why he would do something so foolish. He recalled the warnings. She was a ruthless and meticulous assassin who, no matter how strong her target was, would always find a way to kill them. The leader expressed his concern, asking if he wasn't worried about dying. Sabigan laughed and asked if he was worried about him. The irritated leader snapped that if he died before giving him the promised information, he would be in a tight spot. Sabigan admitted he was right and, looking into the distance, concluded that she was indeed a dangerous woman, and precisely for that reason he needed her even more. The memory transports Sabigan to a dark place and time. In the depths of the demon realm, a towering and sinister citadel rises under a dark and stormy sky, its Gothic structure trembling with dark power. Within its walls, violence is the norm. Orc-like doll creatures fought each other with ferocity, battle cries and agony echoing through the corridors. Suddenly, a column of energy like a Kamehameha descended from the sky, impacting the citadel with a devastating explosion. It is revealed that the one responsible is the Sabigan of the past, unleashing a barrage of spells with magic circles burning around him, channeling overwhelming energy and combining different magics into one attack. Coordinated to shake the heavens of that place, he demonstrates incredible skill. With double casting using both hands, he prepares simultaneously two spells of different natures. He unleashes the Thunder of Judgment and the Void Cannon, two high-level magics that fuse into a torrent of destructive power, annihilating everything in their path. Without stopping, he continues his assault with more magical explosions. Finally, he stops, floating in the air, surrounded by the hum of his magic circles, an image of absolute arcane power. But despite the devastation, a hint of frustration crosses his face. He grinds his teeth as he hears a voice telling him that this cannot be all. Amidst the flames and smoke, a colossal figure emerges, its body wrapped in infernal fire. It is the Demon King Tarant. Sabigan looks at him with pure shock. He realizes that despite having unleashed a barrage of 8th circle spells, the Demon King doesn't have a single scratch. The Demon King looks at him intently. He tells him to go all out, calling him by his demonic name, Switch. He warns him that if he doesn't, he will dispose of him right there. The provocation ignites Sabigan's fury. He screams at the Demon King to shut up while gathering an even greater amount of energy. He prepares his next spell, the Atomic Explosion. A sphere of pure power forms in his hand and he unleashes it in a burst of annihilation that impacts the Demon King directly. However, the result is the same. With insulting ease, Tarant raises a hand and the devastating attack is stopped, its energy absorbed by a small vortex of flames. Sabigan's incredulity reaches its peak. He had just cast an annihilation spell of the 9th circle maximized to its limit, and it had vanished the instant it made contact. Then he realizes his terrible mistake. The spell didn't vanish, it was absorbed. The Demon King now holds the essence of his own attack in the palm of his hand. Before he can react, his own power is reflected back at him, shattering his defensive barriers and striking him with brutal force. The nightmare ends. Sabigan wakes up suddenly in a room at the academy, gasping and covered in cold sweat. He clenches his jaw. The memory is still vivid and painful. He thinks bitterly that no matter how many times he relives it, it remains the same terrible memory. He composes himself and leaves his room. He walks through the academy corridors, reflecting on his current situation. For now, having overcome the biggest obstacle, he knew that, after returning, locating Mei Seoyoung as quickly as possible was one of the main priorities of his grand plan. The problem was that despite her importance, he didn't know her exact whereabouts at this point in time. But luckily, Director Seong Yoon Sung and the Shadow Division moved exactly as he had foreseen, bringing her directly to him. He thinks of his future heroes. Even future powerhouses like Tang Lin and Yeon Wook-hyun couldn't compare to the skills that Mei So-young possesses. His mind focuses on his next task, but his thoughts are interrupted by a scene in the training courtyard. There Mei Seo-young is practicing with her sword. Her beauty is such that one of his students watches her in secret, completely entranced, thinking that if a heavenly maiden descended from the skies, she would look exactly like her. Her swordsmanship is a hypnotic and lethal dance. She moves with a fluid grace, her sword tracing arcs of pink light while petals seem to float around her. A perfect combination of beauty and danger. Upon finishing her routine, she turns around and encounters Sabigan and his students. Mei Seo-young greets Sabigan formally. She smiles modestly, explaining that she was only doing a bit of morning exercise, hoping not to have disturbed anyone. Sabigan, however, praises her, commenting that her swordsmanship was more than admirable. Seizing the opportunity, Mei Seo-young tells him the situation is perfect since she wanted to speak with him anyway. Sabigan, surprised, asks if she means him, and she confirms it, politely asking him to allow her to accompany him for a moment. After a brief pause, he accepts. They begin to walk together through the academy courtyard, and he addresses her formally as Inspector. He stands tall again and praises her, saying her swordsmanship is refined, just as one would expect from someone of the Celestial Sword Alliance. She responds with false humility, saying he flatters her and that there are many experts in the Alliance far above her level. Sabigan thinks to himself how brazen she is, acting as if she seriously belonged to the Inspection Division or the Alliance when it is all a lie. But she quickly returns the compliment, calling him impressive. She reminds him that not long ago he won a public duel with a single blow, and furthermore, he defeated the infamous demon of the Green Forest all by himself. She concludes that honestly he looks more like the true expert. Sabigan is internally surprised by the speed with which she has already investigated his record. He dismisses his achievements as simple luck, a fortunate encounter not worth mentioning. But she, with an enigmatic smile, tells him she doesn't see it that way. She reveals to him that the apprentices say otherwise. She admits his methods may have been a bit harsh lately, but that he has helped them overcome their personal problems, treating everyone equally regardless of their origin or status. Sabigan appears genuinely surprised, clicking his tongue and commenting on what good kids they are. But she isn't finished, adding that there is something else. She speaks of his hands. She examines them closely, observing the calluses and the muscular structure of his palms, and reaches an amazing conclusion. She tells him that for at least 5 years, no more than 10, he has not spent a single day without wielding a weapon. Her mind visualizes relentless training that forged these hands, a devotion that tears the skin over and over. She looks at him directly and tells him that regardless of any lucky encounter, he has every right to be proud as a martial artist. Her words seem to touch a sensitive nerve in Sabagan, who looks at his own hands as if seeing them in a different way. He continues reflecting, and she presses her advantage. She reminds him that as far as she knows, he has never clearly explained the nature of that lucky encounter. With a shrewd look, she asks if he would be willing to tell her a bit more. Sabagan sighs as if giving in. He tells her he supposes he can't avoid it and that he will be honest with her. He shows her his hands again and confesses to her that this power is not a stroke of luck nor something he ever desired. The reason he called it a lucky encounter, he explains, is because he had no other way to explain it. And then he drops the bombshell. He asks the inspector if she has ever heard of a group called the Cult of the Demonic Spirit. Mei Xiaoyang's expression transforms into one of pure shock. While a sinister image of the cult members flashes in her eyes, he continues explaining that not long ago he himself, but she grabs him, her composure broken. She demands to know who the hell he is. She corrects herself, her voice trembling, and asks him how it is possible that he knows that name. Seeing her reaction, a triumphant smile draws across Sabagan's face. Covering his mouth to hide his glee, he thinks to himself that she has fallen into his trap, that she has been completely deceived. The narrative takes us decades into the past, long before the demon invasion began. It is explained to us that back then, there existed a massive religious group known as the Divine Sect of the Heavenly Demon. Although commonly called the Demonic Cult, they followed the principles of their leader, the Heavenly Demon. They formed a sect that expanded its power rapidly and with overwhelming force. Seen as a threat, the central provinces declared them a heretical cult and launched an all-out attack. Thus erupted the greatest war in the history of the Murim world, a conflict that, it is emphasized, occurred long before the demon invasion. The battle was brutal and bloody, with warriors from both sides falling in combat. In the heat of the fight, many of the most powerful warriors of the Murim lost their lives, but in the end, the result was decisive. The armies of the Central Plains stood victorious over mountains of their enemies' corpses. The demonic cult was destroyed. Many years have passed since the eradication of the cult, and peace seems to reign in the Murim world to this day, or at least that is what is believed. The reality, however, is different. The remnants of the demonic cult who survived the Great War continue to be active in secret, operating under a new name, the Cult of the Demonic Spirit. They move in the shadows. Their existence is a secret that even the officials of the Central Plains are unaware of, with the exception of those who have had direct contact with them. Back in the present, Sabigan's revelation has left Mei Xiaoyang in a state of absolute shock. With an intense gaze, she demands to know what his relationship is with the Cult of the Demonic Spirit. Sabigan feigns desperation, asking her why she is suddenly doing this. He raises his hands, asking her to let him go first and promising he will explain everything. She hesitantly lets him go, apologizing and saying she got carried away by the emotion of the moment. But then Sabagan, with a calculating look, changes his tone. More importantly, he points out that judging, based on how she reacted, it seems that even Inspector May knows of the cult's existence. She remains silent for a moment. Then, with a seriousness that freezes the air, she addresses him as Instructor Sabagan. She admits that the existence of the cult of the demonic spirit is a matter of utmost importance to her, more than anything else. She asks him to explain everything in the greatest detail and as truthfully as possible, wanting to know first how it is he knows about them. Sabagan, for his part, cannot control his malicious smile. He stares at her and agrees to explain it all. He begins his story by saying it all happened right after it was decided to publicly revoke his position as assistant instructor. One night, while walking outside the academy reflecting on his inability to use internal magic, he was suddenly kidnapped. Mei So-young repeats the word, incredulous. Sabigan confirms, adding that in his weakness at the time, he couldn't even react properly. He recalls that when he regained consciousness, he found himself face to face with his captor. A man with a spine-chilling voice who told him that if he resisted, he would die like trash, and ordered him to accept his fate and consider it an honor to serve the great resurrection. That man, Sabigan continues, called himself a demonic scholar. Upon hearing this, Mei So-young's gaze intensifies. Filled with a contained fury, she clenches her fist tightly. Sabigan proceeds with his story. He tells that after that, he was subjected to all kinds of cruel experiments. His mind projects images of torture, being tied to a cross, forced to consume poisonous substances, and being subject to surgeries that tore his organs and his flesh, and then he reveals the consequence of all that. As he speaks, a sphere of fire materializes in his hand. He explains that one day, when he regained his senses, he found himself alone, abandoned in their hideout. But he was no longer the same. He had gained a new ability, the capacity to use the true key of heaven instead of internal energy. She can barely contain her amazement. He clenches his fist, and small flames dance around him, confirming that, yes, it is a power so rare most people don't even know it exists. He explains the terrible nature of this power. Possessing true key of heaven means consuming one's own life force to be able to use it. She admits that, to be honest, she finds it hard to believe. Sabigan responds that since he possesses no internal energy, there was no other way he could use such a power, and offers to demonstrate it to her directly. Sabigan thinks that even if it sounds absurd, in the end, she will have no choice but to believe him. Although the existence of the true key of heaven is uncertain, the information he has given about the cult of the demonic spirit matches her own experience almost perfectly. He thinks that if that is the case, he can start to draw her in slowly from that angle. Sabigan, noting her hesitation, throws her a new challenge. He asks if she still doesn't believe him and proposes she accompany him. He tells her that the place where he was kidnapped and tortured, the place where they abandoned him, might still have some traces. He reaches out a hand. Inviting her, however, he adds with a mischievous smile that it's quite far, and they've had enough for today. He suggests that if it's all right with her, they meet outside the academy the following morning to go together. She turns around and leaves, while he offers to guide her. Once she is gone and he is alone, his thoughts reveal the truth. Of course, it's all a lie. He confesses to himself that he never encountered those bastards from the cult of the demonic spirit even once in his past life. His power is a type of magic that has nothing to do with the true key of heaven. Yes, it was all a lie he invented so he could use it. And more than that, it was a lie designed specifically to tell directly to her. The memory he showed her wasn't of the cult, but of his real past. The torture he suffered in the demon realm, screams of agony, his body strapped to a grotesque machine with tentacles and tubes invading his flesh. Two demonic beings observed. One comments that at first, the subject showed a clear rejection of demonic energy, but, surprisingly, his tolerance was gradually increasing. He called him an exceptional figure even compared to beings from other dimensions. The other, higher-ranking demon found it interesting, remembering a saying from the subject's dimension that classified him as one of the weakest beings. He ordered them to ensure he didn't die immediately and to continue increasing his exposure to demonic energy. The tentacles moved, and Sabigan's screams of agony resonated again. The scene jumps to the past of his previous life after the torture. An emaciated Sabigan with white hair is seen collapsing on the floor. Other captured humans run to help him, shouting at him to pull himself together. He coughs violently, spitting blood. Another prisoner approaches him and says it's not bad, that he had already bet everything that he would die that day. Sabigan, with a distorted and defiant smile, responds, "What a coincidence," for he had bet that she would die on the next turn. In the distance, a woman with a bandaged arm, Mei So-young, observes him and comments with a dry smile that he seems to still be full of life. Back in the present, Sabigan stops on a wooded path. He calls for someone to come out of the bushes. When they don't, Sabigan picks up a rock. A man, Shadow number 7, comes out of his hiding place terrified, begging him not to do it. Sabigan, holding the rock, tells him that's precisely why he had to pretend to fall into the trap and slip away. He asks the assassin, If he really thought he wouldn't notice, he had left only one person to watch him. The assassin, Shadow Number 7, curses his bad luck. Sabigan hands him a scroll. The assassin opens it. Confused, asking what all this is, Sabigan explains that the first page is a map with detailed locations. The second contains information he will need upon arriving there. He indicates that at first glance it looks like a hidden cave behind a rock wall. Once inside, he must copy the letters from the second page onto the wall. He assures him that even if it looks like gibberish, he shouldn't worry. He has until the next morning to do it. The assassin, breaking into a cold sweat, he asks if he is being asked to go and do something right this second. Sabigan confirms it with a smile. Trembling, the assassin asks, "Why me?" Sabigan ignores him and tells him to hurry up, and the assassin runs off, cursing through his tears. Sabigan reflects that although it might be difficult to cover a wide area in a single night, it will be enough if it is clearly visible to anyone passing by. What happens after that, he thinks with a grim look, he will be able to control at his whim. The final scene takes us to the office of Vice Director Cheon Seong-yoon. He asks Mei So-young how the investigation is going. Seeing that they called her the soul-stealing heavenly maiden, she asks him to simply call her Mei So-young, saying that ridiculous title is only going to make things more awkward. Cheon apologizes and asks about the interrogation, wanting to know if she has discovered anything about the place Sabigan mentioned before. She stares at him intently. Recalling Sabigan's words about his power, she thinks that, to be honest, that power is not a blessing, nor was it something he desired. After a pause, she reports that there is still nothing substantial to report. She adds that if they want to get past the confusion and obtain accurate information, she will need more time. Cheon asks her to ensure she conducts a thorough investigation. He expresses his conviction that Sabigan is hiding something, as his actions lately have made no sense. He worries that if he turns out to be a spy for some dangerous organization, he could pose a major threat to the Orthodox Alliance. Mei So-young responds that, honestly, she doesn't care if he is with the Orthodox Alliance or a demonic cult, but for the sake of a smooth operation, she will check in advance. Cheon asks what she will check. In a swift motion, she unsheathes her sword and stabs it into the table right in front of him. With an icy gaze, she asks Cheon if he would mind if she cut his throat on the spot if it turns out Sabigan has a suspicious background or motive. With an expression of lethal determination, she thinks to herself that it doesn't matter if it's a lie or a trap. If it turns out Sabigan has deceived her with some superficial trick, she will wring every last drop of information out of him and kill him slowly and painfully. The following morning, Sabigan is in his room, meditating with a bare torso. He concentrates while a dense purple aura of mana envelops him. His focus is on his middle dantian, the center of his arcane power, where a sphere of purple energy glows intensely. He reflects on his current state. Thanks to having absorbed the highest-grade mana stone last time, his power has improved a bit. However, a pang of disappointment hits him as he realizes that even so, he has only managed to reach the 6th circle of magic. Despite this, he knows that at this level he should be able to face at least a master-level beast. Within the academy, he is sure there is no opponent who can pose a problem for him, as long as he excludes that guy from the equation. The real problem lies in his lower dantian. Although he can feel a faint presence of internal energy, and there is no problem with his veins or meridians, he is unable to cultivate it. It is the strange constitution he was born with, a barrier that no medicinal herb or cultivation technique can overcome. Not even Chief Physician Jin Beck had seen such a peculiar constitution. But with bitter irony, he recognizes that it was precisely this constitution that allowed him to survive. He remembers his time as a prisoner in the demon realm, being just an ordinary laborer and an external martial artist. The only reason they didn't kill him immediately, and instead kept him as an experimental subject, was thanks to this cursed and peculiar constitution of his, and it was there that he met Mei So-young in her most vulnerable state. His thoughts are interrupted by the sudden arrival of Shadow Number 7. The assassin bursts into the room completely exhausted, and complains about having been up all night preparing everything and about Sabigan making him do such useless things. Sabigan, without moving from his meditative posture, looks at him calmly and asks if he ever told him to do anything. The assassin complains about the grievance for a moment, before exploding in rage, unsheathing his sword and lunging toward him, shouting insults. Unfazed, Sabagan stands up and begins to dress, telling him calmly that he was only joking. He assures him he did a good job and that he can leave now. While the assassin, still steaming with rage, withdraws, Sabagan looks out the window. There is only one thing left to do. As the academy students enter the courtyard, Sabagan goes over the final details of his plan. Now he just needs to show Mei Xiaoyang the cave that Shadow Number 7 has prepared to look like the residence of the cult of the demonic spirit, and then spread the appropriate false information. He admits the staging might be a bit clumsy, but it doesn't matter. The cave entrance is covered by a mana barrier created by demons, which in the eyes of martial artists will look like sinister sorcery, typical of the demonic cult heirs. More importantly, this is the first clue she will have about a group she has been hunting without success. He knows she will be suspicious, but for now she will have no choice but to cling to that clue. He meets Mei Xiaoyang and greets her with unshakable determination, and she declares that it was the place where the demonic cult was established. Sabagan's plan is about to conclude. After this, while giving her the correct false information and stoking her hostility toward the cult, he will be able to control her at his whim. He agrees to guide her, and they agree to meet outside the academy. The image of his past life returns to his mind. In a dark demonic fortress, a man is being tortured, a sphere of purple energy embedded in her chest. Mei Xiaoyang, wounded and desperate, watches as the white-haired Sabagan bangs on a door, shouting for them to stop, that the man will die. But she stops him, telling him with a broken voice that it is already too late. As the demonic warriors carry away the corpse, the two are left alone in the silence. He murmurs that only the two of them are left. With a cracking voice, she asks if they are the last of the Murim. He tries to give her hope, suggesting that there might be other survivors, but she has lost all faith, lamenting a shitty life and wishing she had died on the battlefield. She confesses something even darker. It is not the first time she has been captured like this. He realizes she went through something similar in her world, and she confirms it was them, the cult of the demonic spirit, though she believes he wouldn't understand. She asks about her ability to absorb the star art, and she admits it was a side effect of the cult's experiments. A truth she had never told anyone before, and she is surprised that it works even on monsters. Now she says her revenge has failed, that she gives up after 10 years of fruitless searching. She asks him if he knows why he fights in the war, and he responds that it was for the future of the Murim. She laughs at his innocence. The truth is that she had grown tired of living, and since she doesn't even have the courage to take her own life, she went to war looking for a place to die, but she didn't expect to die slowly in a place like this. Interrupts, telling her not to give up, that they are still alive. He declares that he has no intention of dying there, and asks her to endure. He makes her a promise. If they survive, they will take revenge on the cult of the demonic spirit together. He will help. Then, with a smile, he asks if she feels a little more hopeful now. She looks at him and snorts. What a joke, she thinks. How could someone who can't even use internal energy say something like that? The memory fades, and in the present, Sabagan runs through the forest. Memories of his past life, buried for centuries, keep surfacing. He wonders if it's because he has reunited with her. Thinking of her, he clenches his teeth tightly and decides to cast aside sentimentality. Now the priority is to secure Mei Xiaoyang with convincing words, the power that resides within her, a power she doesn't fully understand herself, is one of the essential conditions for his place against Tarrant. He tells himself he won't ask for forgiveness or understanding. He has come too far to stop for sentimentality. In a hurry, he heads to the meeting point. Mei Xiaoyang is already there. He thinks she arrived much earlier to inspect the area, but she has found no traps or tracks. A doubt settles in her mind. What if he is also part of the cult of the demonic spirit? Suddenly, a person appears behind her, and noting this, she comments on his punctuality. At that precise moment, a burly bandit stands up, swinging a broadsword at her. A memory of disbelief flashes through Mei Xiaoyang's mind. She sees herself as a child in a snowy landscape of the past, overflowing with joy. She plays while snowflakes fall around her, laughing loudly, marveling at the winter spectacle. Her parents watch her from a distance with a warm smile. Her father affectionately asks if the snow makes her so happy while the girl runs around celebrating the cold. Her mother, with a voice full of affection, asks her to be careful not to hurt herself. But in her Excitement. The girl trips and falls face first into the snow. A small whimper of pain escapes her lips as her mother approaches, asking if she is okay, tenderly reminding her that she had already warned her, offering her hand and asking if she can get up on her own. But that tender scene fades, shattered by a cold and distant voice. The voice orders the woman to wake up. Mei Seo-young's eyes snap open, returning her to a harsh, dark reality. Before her stands an imposing and brutal figure. He looks at her with contempt while she, bound and helpless, watches him. In her mind, memories of the bandit they had eliminated before haunt her as she identifies him aloud. The soul-stealing heavenly maiden declares with fury that he will avenge his brother, Wei of the Five Peaks, whom she murdered. Behind him, a group of bandits with eyes bloodshot with a red glow backs him up, ready for combat. His identity is the leader of the Black Death sect, the execution maniac, Wei San-tak. It is revealed that this notorious sect is known for its robberies, murders, kidnappings, and all types of vile crimes. And that, surprisingly, its leader and vice leader were brothers. In her mind, Mei Seo-young curses herself for her carelessness. She recognizes that normally she would never have failed to detect such a pursuit. But she wonders if she foolishly let her guard down just because she heard a clue about the cult of the demonic spirit. Wei San-tak mocks her, assuming she used her body to seduce his brother, however. He admits with some surprise that her martial arts are quite impressive. While an image of the bodies of his fallen men confirms that the battle was hard fought, he abruptly interrupts her, calling her words useless babble. Mei Seo-young, unintimidated, returns the question with sarcasm, asking if he also wants to have a little fun like his late brother. She asks if that wasn't the intention from the beginning by going to such lengths to catch her. Wei San-tak lets out a sinister smile, confirming that she knows. With a malevolent grin, he tells her that if he had only wanted to kill her, he would have done it already. He warns her that if the rumors had been false, he would have cut off her head immediately. With a lecherous expression, he declares it is true that the soul-stealing heavenly maiden is a legendary beauty, and that today he will enjoy the pleasures of heaven. His threat turns more sinister. He states that, of course, he will start by cutting off those cursed hands rumored to absorb internal energy. Then, when every one of his subordinates is satisfied, he will peel that delicate skin of hers piece by piece with extreme care and finally kill her. Only then could his brother rest in peace. Mei Seo-young comments that it is too foul to even consider it revenge. She curses her luck, lamenting that just when she thought she had found a clue about those bastards, she is going to die at the hands of beasts like these. She resigns herself to her fate, considering it an appropriate end for a careless assassin, and waits for the end. The excited bandits cheer on their boss, asking him to start already and let them have fun too. Wei San-tak, with a cruel smile, raises his sword to cut off her hands. Mei Seo-young, stunned, can barely believe what she sees. It is Instructor Sabigan. Infuriated, one of the bandits screams, asking who the hell that bastard is, and makes a desperate attack with an axe. Sabigan, with chilling calm, casts a haste spell, moving at blinding speed, dodging the blow effortlessly and appearing behind his opponent. With insulting superiority, he grabs him by the neck, choking his cry of pain and lifting him with disdain. A whirlwind of fury is unleashed in Sabigan. He tells them how those bastards almost erased his last few hundred years of existence. With eyes glowing with a cold light, he unleashes a discharge of lightning. Electricity courses through the bandit's body, revealing his skeleton in a macabre flash as he screams in agony. The attack ceases, leaving them as scorched and smoking husks. Another bandit asks in disbelief what that attack was. Wei San-tak, enraged, orders his remaining terrified men to kill the intruder. The bandits launch an attack. Sabigan, with imperturbable calm, invokes a blink spell, disappearing from his enemy's sight. The confused bandits wonder where he has gone. He reappears behind one of them and, with a gesture of his hand, unleashes a blast of air, causing the man's body to explode from within in a rain of blood. Telekinetically controlling his enemy's weapons, he turns them against them, killing them with their own swords. He summons a mana blade and plunges into the butchery, Cutting down the remaining bandits with lethal and ruthless efficiency, the last terrified survivors beg for their lives. Aisho Young observes the massacre completely dumbfounded. She thinks that this man is the same one she has been watching over the last few days. Unable to reconcile the incompetent instructor with the monster before her, Wei-san-tak, mad with rage, lunges toward Sabigan, screaming for him to die. His sword strikes. But a defensive energy, a stone skin, materializes at the last second, stopping the blow. Stunned by the enhanced defensive energy, he has no time to reason before. Sabigan breaks his jaw with a single punch, sending him flying through the air. Defeated and bleeding from the mouth, he is crushed against the ground by an invisible force. Sabigan has activated a graviton hold, immobilizing him completely. He looms over him, his eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity as a magic circle forms above his head. With absolute coldness, he orders the pest to die. Wei-san-tak, in one last desperate attempt, begs him to wait, but Sabigan ignores him, unleashing a column of purple energy that consumes him completely.